Chapter 5079. No leader? Lin Yi's frown deepened. Then when something big happens this time, you people from the Archaic Alliance would gather together to discuss countermeasures, right? You're just saying your own thing and there's really no one who can lead the way? Fei Yangxing thought for a moment and said, that's not necessarily the case. Although it's up to each sect to decide, there's an Uncle Master leading the expedition in the secular world this time. However, everyone feels that the expedition in the secular world isn't difficult at all, so that Uncle Master isn't in charge of anything. He's only in charge of opening and closing the primordial passageway. Who is it? What's his strength? Lin Yi asked. It's a leader of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. His name is Xianijia. I heard that he is a master at the early stage of Gold Core Realm. He is the strongest among all the people in the secular world this time. He may show up this time, but I don't know whether he will come out to take charge or not, Fei Yangxing said carefully. After all, the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island had not suffered any losses so far. Instead, competitors such as the Snow Sword sect and the Jianghu sect suffered losses. Xianijia was likely to continue to ignore them. If the other sects were all badly hurt in the secular world this time, the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island would be the dominant sect in the future. The Blue Cloud sect in the North Island? Lin Yi was stunned. What the hell? Why do the names of these archaic sects coincide with the Heaven Stage Island? He could ignore the Snow Sword sect, which could be regarded as a pure coincidence. But now there was another one and it was called the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. You won't tell me that there are Soaring sect and Xuanji sect in the Archaic Alliance, will you? Lin Yi couldn't help but ask with a strange expression. Yes, the three sects in the North Island are like brothers, and each of them is a first-class sect in the Archaic Alliance. Many of the elders in the Alliance are from the three sects in the North Island. Senior, how do you know this? Fei Yangxing felt a little strange. In his opinion, although Lin Yi was powerful, he was just a primordial spirit in the secular world. There was no reason for him to know about the small Jianghu in the primitive times. After all, the primitive passage only opened once in 1,000 years. Lin Yi ignored him. At this moment he was completely speechless. If this was a fucking coincidence, his head could be twisted off and kicked like a ball. Just a moment ago, he said that the people of the Archaic Alliance were narrow-minded and thought that Heaven Step Island was just a rumor. But now, a bunch of sects with the same name as Heaven Step Island had popped up, especially the three great gates of the Northern Island. Lin Yi believed that there must be some kind of connection between the two. It was just that this connection might not be known by ordinary disciples. So, if I were to negotiate with the Archaic Alliance, this Xianijia that you mentioned is the only candidate? Lin Yi put aside his doubts and returned to the topic at hand. Yes, he is the only one who can suppress the other primordial sects in terms of status and strength. If even he can't do it, then no one can. Fei Yangxing nodded. Yes, he is the only one who can suppress the other primordial sections. Okay, then go and tell him that the president of the Cultivators Association, Lin Yi, has invited him to meet at the Supernatural Investigation Bureau, Lin Yi said immediately. This. Fei Yangxing immediately flinched. He was now a traitor to the Archaic Alliance. Although the incident with Shui Jianfeng should not have been spread back, he still felt very guilty. Asking him to pass a message to Xianijia at this time would be playing with fire. Why? You don't want to go? Lin Yi's face darkened. No, senior, I will definitely do as you say. Fei Yangxing was shocked and quickly said, but I can only try my best. I can't say that I will definitely meet Uncle Master Xan. I just hope that I can pass the message. Should I go now? Go. Lin Yi nodded and then said, oh, by the way, go there and ask about Lung Lung. Maybe she has already gone back. Yes. Fei Yangxing left immediately, carrying Lin Yi's spirit imprint on him. No matter what Lin Yi told him, he had to do it. He wouldn't dare say no. Ziyu called out as soon as Fei Yangxing left, Lin Yi bro, who's Lung Lung? It wasn't just Ziyu, Lingshan and the others were all concerned as well. As for Wu Qintian and the others, they were all looking left and right. From Lin Yi's tone, they knew that this was a new sis-in-law. She's someone from the Archaic Alliance that I met before. You'll meet her in the future, Lin Yi blushed. Seeing that Ziyu was about to ask, Qintian quickly changed the topic and helped Lin Yi out. He said that Xianijia is an early-phase Golden Core Master. What's your strength now, boss? Foundation establishment full circle. This Yuan Shin of mine is far from the level of my main body. I won't be able to level up for now, Lin Yi said. Doesn't that mean you can't compare to him? The group couldn't help but worry. Because of Lin Yi's influence, they knew their levels very well. Facing a golden core early phase as a foundation establishment full circle was a different level altogether. It's a bit difficult, but it's just a negotiation. We might not even start fighting. Plus, even if we do start fighting, we don't know who will win. Lin Yi smiled faintly. His Yuan Shin's ability to challenge higher levels was a big weakness compared to his main body, but compared to others, it was already very impressive. If he really used all his skills, he might not lose to an early phase golden core practitioner. But Lin Yi was worried that there might be other hidden masters other than Xianijia in the Archaic Alliance. That would be troublesome. He hoped that Fei Yangxing's information was true. After all, from a normal person's point of view, a golden core early phase master coming to the common world was already a big deal. People stronger than this wouldn't even bother to come. As Lin Yi and the group continued with the banquet, Fei Yangxing rushed to Shenangjia overnight and went straight to the meeting point, asking to see Xianijia of the Green Cloud sect. He didn't have much hope in this. After all, when Yin Jiping and Sun Baimei were killed, Xianijia didn't even show up. Instead, it was Shui Jianfeng who stood out. He was just a normal disciple of the Snow Sword sect, so he didn't have much confidence in meeting Xianijia. But unexpectedly, the whole process went surprisingly smoothly. Fei Yangxing met Xianijia very quickly. Chapter 5080. Yes, I was asked to bring a message to you, Martial Uncle Xian. Lin Yi, the president of the Secular World Cultivators Association, invites you to meet him at the Supernatural Investigation Bureau, Fei Yangxing said respectfully. The president of the Secular World Cultivators Association, Lin Yi? I've never heard of him before. Xianijia shook his head, showing a lack of interest. Asking him, an expert in the early stage of the Gold Core realm from the Archaic Alliance, to meet a cultivator from the secular world sounded ridiculous. Did Lin Yi think too highly of himself? No, I believe you must have heard of him. He's the primordial spirit cultivator. Fei Yangxing thought for a while and told him everything that Lin Yi had done. Yin Jiping and Sun Baimei from the Bixia sect were killed by him. Shui Jianfeng, the eldest senior brother of the Snow Sword sect, had his elixir field destroyed. Yu Zhengliang and the other 3 from the Chengkuan sect were also beaten up badly by him in the Snow Valley. What? You did all these? Xianijia was shocked. In fact, he had heard about what happened in the Snow Valley from Yu Zhengliang, but he didn't know who Lin Yi was. He didn't expect him to be the primordial spirit cultivator who had caused a stir. What's more, this guy had destroyed Shui Jianfeng's elixir field. Xianijia's expression suddenly became solemn. Shui Jianfeng was known as the strongest expert in the Foundation establishment realm in the Archaic Alliance. If even his elixir field was destroyed, then this primordial spirit cultivator's strength must be at the peak of Foundation establishment realm, or at least the Gold Core realm. Yes, I'm telling the truth, Fei Yangxing promised. It's incredible that there's such an expert in the secular world. Xianijia murmured to himself. Even he might not be able to deal with an expert of this level, so he had to be careful. As the person in charge of the training in the secular world, Xianijia didn't mind letting the disciples of other sects get into trouble, but he couldn't control the situation if it got so big. Otherwise, not only would the disciples of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island be in trouble, but he would also be severely punished by the Elders Association of the Archaic Alliance. He couldn't afford the consequences. Do you know where he came from? Xianijia asked. I don't know. I only know that he's a primordial spirit cultivator. Fei Yangxing shook his head. A primordial spirit cultivator. Xianijia pondered for a moment and thought to himself, could this person be a powerful primordial spirit cultivator that was left in the secular world during the primordial times? Otherwise, I've never heard of any cultivators in the secular world reaching the state of Heaven Wei. As a result, he had successfully become the president of the Cultivator Association. Now that things had developed to this stage, he couldn't ignore it no matter what. Xianijia immediately said, go and tell him that I agree to the meeting this time. The Supernatural Investigation Bureau, right? I'll go and meet this primordial spirit cultivator. Fei Xingyang was overjoyed. He didn't know what Xianijia would do to him if he couldn't do what Xianijia asked. He'd be in a lot of trouble if he took it out on him. Fortunately, Xianijia took it seriously this time and agreed so quickly. After setting the time, Fei Yangxing returned to Donghai and told Lin Yi exactly what Xianijia said. Of course, he did all sorts of things in secret and in the open. He was hoping that Lin Yi would let him go if he was happy. Very well, Lingshan, let's go to the Supernatural Investigation Bureau now, Lin Yi nodded. Lin Yi bro, I want to go too, Ziyu said excitedly. Yeah boss, let's go together. At least we'll be able to boost our reputation. Qintian and the others followed. Imposing, Lin Yi said as he looked at them, speechless. Do you guys think this is a normal gang negotiation? The boss is sitting together and the lackeys are standing in a line behind him. Do you guys have to change into black suits and sunglasses? Yeah, right? Lin Yi was speechless. Ah, that's not impossible. I remember Zhong Pingliang now, Kang Xiaobo nodded. Screw you. Just stay here and take care of Meng Yao and the others for me. Ling Shan and I will go to the Supernatural Investigation Bureau. Lin Yi waved his hand, not sure if he should cry or laugh. But Pingliang's not bad. He's been working with me on Sky Class Island. The opponent was an early-phase Golden Core Master after all. If things didn't work out and they ended up fighting, Lin Yi would be able to protect himself with his current strength. Taking care of one person was already his limit, and if everyone went with him, he'd be holding back. Ling Shan, on the other hand, was the vice director of the Supernatural Investigation Bureau. Bringing her along was a matter of course, otherwise Lin Yi wouldn't even bring her along. After much persuasion, Lin Yi finally managed to convince the group to go with Ling Shan to the HQ. As for Fei Yangxing, he was left behind to guard the door. The guy was a Foundation establishment stage after all, and Lin Yi didn't have to worry about him suddenly betraying them. His presence was a deterrent to the other Archaic Alliance disciples. Even if he wasn't as strong as the guy, he could at least stall for time. Lin Yi was still in the passenger seat, but the chauffeur was Ling Shan. He couldn't help but ask curiously as he watched the silly girl's lips curl up uncontrollably. Did something happen to your face? You're the one who's slapped. Ling Shan's face darkened, but her lips curled back up in the blink of an eye. She stuttered, It feels so good to have just you and me. Lin Yi jumped at the sight of Ling Shan closing her eyes. Don't close your eyes. You're still driving. Don't close your eyes. Ling Shan rolled her eyes at him, muttering, You're such an insensitive blockhead. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Naturally, he knew that Ling Shan wanted to spend some alone time with him, but it was a shame that he owed so many girlfriends. Even if he spent all his time with them, it wouldn't be possible for him to spend some alone time with them. It was a normal thing for normal girls, but for Ling Shan and the others, it was a luxury. Lin Yi owed them far too much. Lin Yi was filled with guilt, but Ling Shan didn't think much of it. To her, having some alone time in the car was enough. After all, in her eyes, Lin Yi was someone who was destined to shake the world. If Lin Yi were to be like the others, hanging around women all day, she wouldn't even be interested in him. The two arrived at the HQ, and it wasn't long before a white-bearded old man came to see them. Chapter 5081. This was very normal. He was a master in the early stage of Gold Core from the Archaic Alliance. If he still took these people from the Supernatural Investigation Bureau seriously, then he really had to be on his guard. After all, they might have ulterior motives. But this almost indifferent attitude was not a bad thing for them. At least they could mind their own business. However, after seeing Lin Yi, the white-bearded old man's indifferent expression immediately disappeared and was replaced with a solemn expression. He could be considered to have a lot of experience. Although Lin Yi's aura was restrained and he didn't show it, he still exuded an unfathomable aura. Intuition told the white-bearded old man that this person was definitely not someone to be trifled with. I'm Xianijia, an elder of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island of the Archaic Alliance. I'm the person in charge of this experiential learning in the secular world. Are you Lin Yi? Xianijia asked seriously. Yes, please sit down. Lin Yi smiled politely. In fact, he felt quite strange at the moment. He was a genuine disciple of the North Island, but the other party actually called himself an elder of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. This kind of dislocation made him speechless. Suppressing the strange feeling in his heart, Lin Yi exchanged a few words with the other party seriously. After all, he was a master in the early stage of Gold Core. In terms of strength, the other party actually had the upper hand. Moreover, the other party was backed by the Archaic Alliance. Even if Lin Yi did not shed all pretense of cordiality, he had to be polite to him. Otherwise, there would be nothing to talk about. Xianijia speculated that Lin Yi was a powerful primordial spirit from the Archaic era. At this time, seeing Lin Yi's extraordinary temperament, he naturally would not be too arrogant. Strength determined the right to speak. It was natural for him to ignore the low-strength cultivators in the secular world. But if he also ignored Lin Yi, then it could only mean that there was something wrong with his brain. Being able to become the person in charge of the training in the secular world, it was obvious that there was no problem with his brain. On the contrary, this person was a smooth and slick person. Otherwise, if he only relied on his strength to suppress them, so many ancient sects might not necessarily listen to him. President Lin, I'm here today to sort out the unpleasantness between the Archaic Alliance and the secular world. We need to find out who is right and who is wrong. Otherwise, if the hatred between the two sides deepens, it will not be a good thing for both the Archaic Alliance and the secular world. I believe President Lin agrees on this point? Xianijia went straight to the point. Of course, the secular world is our home. No one wants their home to be on fire. This time, I specially invited Elder Xian here to come here to clarify the matter. I hope that the Archaic Alliance can control the behavior of disciples in the future to avoid any friction. Lin nodded. Alright, then let's talk about the Qingquan sect. The one who injured Yu Jingliang and the other three was President Lin, right? Also, I heard that Shui Jianfeng from the Snow Sword faction also had his Dantian destroyed by you? Xianijia confirmed. That's right. These two things are true. I didn't want to do anything to them, but they went too far and crossed the line. Naturally, they should suffer a little. Lin nodded and said faintly, the secular world has its own rules. If the Archaic Alliance wants to pick disciples from the secular world, it's fine. As long as the cultivators themselves agree, we won't stop you. However, if you want to forcefully take them, then there's nothing more to say. I know a little about what happened in Shuegu. It was indeed the sect of Qingquan that acted impulsively and turned a good thing into a bad thing. They have nothing to say about being beaten up. As for the matter of Shui Jianfeng, they went straight to Lin Yi. It's reasonable for Lin Yi to destroy his Dantian in a fit of rage. I have nothing to say about that. Xianijia admitted to the two things without hesitation. On the one hand, he was in the wrong, and on the other hand, it had nothing to do with him. Anyway, it was not the people of his Green Cloud sect in the North Island who got hurt. The leading senior brothers of these sects were unreliable, so they could not blame others, let alone Xianijia. Elder Xian is indeed a reasonable man. Lin Yi was a little surprised. Xianijia nodded. He was relieved that Xianijia was so easygoing. He hated those who thought highly of themselves but refused to admit their mistakes. If they couldn't be reasoned with, they could only solve it with their fists. That was the last thing he wanted to see. However, regarding the matter of Yin Jiping and Sun Baimei from the evil warding sect, Lin Yi killed them without hesitation. Isn't that a little unreasonable? Xianijia's face darkened. He didn't care if the people from other sects were injured or disabled, but it was different when two people were killed. As the person in charge of the team, he would be punished by the Archaic Alliance if he didn't have a reasonable reason. I'm a primordial spirit cultivator. The two of them attacked me immediately. Elder Xian, you should know what they wanted to do, right? Since they wanted to devour me, I had to kill them out of self-defense. Is there anything wrong with that? Lin Yi asked back. Xianijia was at a loss for words. Self-defense was justified no matter where it was. Even in the archaic underworld, there wouldn't be a different result. Since the two of them wanted to kill Lin Yi, they naturally had to be prepared to be killed by Lin Yi. Even if they died, it would be in vain. If Elder Xian thinks that I deserve to be devoured by them, then I'm afraid there's no need for us to talk anymore. I'll make it clear first. No matter who wants to hurt me or the people around me, I will kill him without hesitation. Remember, no matter who it is, Lin Yi said in a tough tone. Xianijia took a deep look at him. At this moment he suddenly felt an inexplicable aura. It wasn't the kind of aura that could tell one's cultivation level, but he vaguely felt that the person in front of him was an unfathomable super master. Logically speaking, as a master in the early stage of Gold Core Realm, he was already invincible in the secular world. However, at this moment, his heart trembled instinctively. He felt that he was like a lowly ant in front of the person in front of him. His life and death were in the hands of the person in front of him, and he had no power to resist. How is this possible? Xianijia was stunned. He shook his head hard in disbelief. Although his intuition had always been very accurate, this sudden thought was too ridiculous. Not to mention in the secular world, even in the Archaic Alliance, a master in the early stage of Gold Core Realm like him was not a lowly existence. Although his strength was far inferior to those old monsters in the nascent Soul Realm, it was basically impossible for him to be easily killed like an ant. What did you say? Lin Yi's expression changed. He thought that the person in front of him was refuting him. If this went on, it would be impossible for them to come to an agreement. Although it was the last resort, he had no choice but to fight. Chapter 5082. Oh, it's nothing. Xianijia came back to his senses. He shook his head and said, Don't be nervous, President Lin. In fact, I don't think it's wrong for you to kill Yin Jiping and Sun Baimei. It's unwise to destroy the good relationship between the Archaic Alliance and the secular world because of this. That's good. Thank you for your understanding, Elder Xian. Lin Yi and Lingshan looked at each other and breathed out in relief. I'm just stating the facts, not trying to do you a favor, so you don't have to thank me, Xianijia said calmly. That moment was just an illusion, but it made him believe that Lin Yi had a powerful background, so he didn't want to make an enemy out of him. There was no need to make an enemy out of him over something so unimportant. Of course, there was another reason. Evil Warding Sect wasn't considered strong in Archaic Alliance, and they had always been weird and unreasonable. They weren't very popular in Archaic Alliance and they made enemies everywhere. Naturally, he wouldn't stand up for two dead people from Evil Warding Sect, but if it were a mainstream sect like Snow Sword School, his attitude might change. With Elder Xian's status, it's already a blessing for the common world to be able to be impartial and talk about the facts. If it were someone else, it wouldn't be easy, Lin Yi smiled faintly. From the beginning until now, Xianijia had accepted almost everything Lin Yi said. Although it was true, it was rare for an early-stage Golden Core expert of the Archaic Alliance to listen to him calmly. Lin Yi's impression of Xianijia had improved a lot. Xianijia's attitude towards Lin Yi improved a lot. You're being too polite, President Lin. In fact, the Archaic Alliance has always been separated from the secular world. It's just that the two worlds are separated from each other. It can be said that we share the same origin, so we've never had any hostile thoughts towards the secular world. Instead of saying that this trip to the secular world is an experience for the disciples of each sect, it's more like a homecoming, said Xianijia with the intention of building a closer relationship. Since that's the case, I hope Elder Xian can restrain the disciples of the Archaic Alliance so that they don't cause trouble again and again, Lin Yi sternly said. To be honest with you, President Lin, we, the Archaic Alliance, have already made it clear that no disciple is allowed to destroy the order of the secular world. The reason for these conflicts is just because of the difference in background between the two parties. There's no malice at all, Xianijia evaded. The difference in background is understandable, but there is also an old saying that when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Just now, Elder Xian also said that you are returning home, so you should abide by the rules of the secular world, right? Lin Yi said lightly. Speaking of, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, I have a question. I hope you can enlighten me. Xianijia suddenly changed the topic. Oh. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. Chairman Lin is from the secular world, right? Xianijia asked. Of course. Lin Yi nodded. Although he had stayed on the Heaven Stage Island for 3 years, he was born and raised in the secular world after all. He was a native of the secular world. Since you're from the secular world, you should have existed for a long time since you're only at the primordial soul realm. Could it be that you're a powerful primordial soul realm cultivator from the primordial age? Xianijia asked. The real reason why he came today and behaved so nicely was that he guessed that Lin Yi was a powerful figure from the primordial age. That was why he dared not provoke him. Lin Yi took a deep look at Xianijia's expression and nodded. That's right. Originally, I wouldn't reveal my background to anyone. However, since you've asked about it, I don't mind telling you since we have a close relationship. A close relationship? Xianijia was taken aback. Even if Lin Yi was a powerful figure from the primordial age, where did the word, close relationship, come from? Lin Yi gave Lingshan a look, signaling her to close the door. Lingshan smirked. She knew that Lin Yi was lying when she saw his expression. She stood up and closed the door. She even stayed outside on purpose. She was afraid that she would expose herself if she didn't keep a straight face. Today's matter is between my mouth and your ears. No one else can know about it. Do you understand? Lin Yi said solemnly. Huh. Xianijia was even more stunned. Lin Yi's tone was that of a normal practitioner from the secular world. Now he was acting like a senior. Thinking back to the inexplicable fear he felt earlier, could it be that this primordial soul had a special relationship with him? Xianijia, you're a junior. Your sect's ancestor is here. Why aren't you greeting him? Lin Yi scolded suddenly. What? Xianijia was stunned. What the hell? Sect's ancestor? Humph, I'm from the primordial North Island's Blue Cloud sect. Speaking of which, you're from the same sect as me. I didn't want to reveal this relationship before, but now that I've revealed it, shouldn't you greet him? Lin Yi humphed coldly. Although he had said this on the spur of the moment, it wasn't necessarily empty words. Just from the names of the sects, he could roughly determine that the Archaic Alliance's 3 great gates of the Northern Island and the Heavenly Island's 3 great pavilions of the Northern Island were inextricably linked. Otherwise, there was no way to explain the strange names of the 2 sections. Although it was risky for him to do so, he was quite confident. If he didn't guess it wrong, he, the disciple of the Heavenly Island's Blue Cloud Pavilion, and the Archaic Alliance's Blue Cloud sect's North Island's Blue Cloud sect's disciple were from the same sect. In the cultivation world, seniority had always been determined by strength. Xianijia was just a disciple in the early stage of Gold Core. In front of him, a master in the early stage of Mystic class, he was naturally a junior. What he said was true. However, Xianijia didn't believe what Lin Yi said. He thought that Lin Yi might be a genuine primordial soul, but it was too ridiculous to say that he was the ancestor of the Blue Cloud sect's North Island's Blue Cloud sect. How could there be such a coincidence in the world? President Lin, you don't have to treat me like a 3-year-old kid, do you? Xianijia sneered. He was from the Blue Cloud sect's North Island, so he said that he was the ancestor of the Blue Cloud sect's North Island's Blue Cloud sect. If he was from the Snowsword faction, this guy would probably be the ancestor of the Snowsword faction. It was just taking advantage of the situation. Who didn't know that? The Blue Cloud sect's North Island's cultivation method is Blue Cloud Calming Spell, Lin Yi said lightly. Chapter 5083. To be a man of Blue Cloud, I have 3 signs and 6 orifices. Lin Yi said word by word in a calm tone. This was the basic mantra that Meng Jueguang taught them when they first entered the Welcome Pavilion. Every disciple of the Blue Cloud Pavilion had a copy, but most of them just looked at it. Very few of them put in the effort to practice it. After all, it was not a profound cultivation method. Lin Yi, of course, wasn't going to waste his time on this, but he'd done some research on it before and he had a photographic memory too, so he was able to memorize it easily. Initially, Xianijia had a disdainful look on his face. However, his expression changed when he heard the original version of the Green Cloud Calming Spell. However, he did not believe it. Although outsiders usually only knew the name of the Green Cloud Calming Spell, very few of them knew the specific mantra. However, there were always exceptions. There were so many disciples of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. It was not strange for someone to accidentally leak the Green Cloud Calming Spell. If someone could pretend to be a senior of the sect just by reciting a few mantra, Xianijia would be a fool. You don't have to lie to yourself anymore. Xianijia was about to stop Lin Yi, but he was stunned. The Green Cloud Calming Spell that Lin Yi recited seemed to be slightly different from what he knew. Although 99% of it was the same, there were a few minor but crucial changes. Xianijia relied on the spell of Clear Cloud Heart Calming to reach his current level of strength. He knew everything about the spell of Clear Cloud Heart Calming. If it was someone else, they might laugh at Lin Yi for being an unprofessional liar who could not even recite the incantation correctly. However, Xianijia knew that Lin Yi was reciting the real spell of Clear Cloud Heart Calming. No wonder I felt something was wrong when I was practicing. It turns out that the mantra is wrong. It's obviously smoother after the changes. Xianijia could not help but murmur. Meanwhile, Lin Yi was still reciting. Xianijia was shocked again as he listened. What? There's more? There's a mantra for the Gold Core realm. The Green Cloud Calming Spell only had 353 words. Theoretically, it could only be used to the full completion of Foundation establishment. In other words, disciples like him who had cultivated to the early stage of the Gold Core realm had to change to a higher level. However, the length of Lin Yi's recitation was already more than 500 words. The rest was the mantra for the Gold Core realm. It wouldn't mean anything if he just memorized the Clear Cloud Heart Calming mantra word for word, but now, not only did he memorize the original version, he even had the mantra for the Golden Core stage. This wasn't something that an outsider could do. There was only one explanation. Lin Yi was indeed a disciple of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. Moreover, he was much older than Xianijia, so he knew the original version of the Green Cloud Calming Spell. As for the ready-made Green Cloud Calming Spell of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island, it was just an incomplete version left behind after the turmoil of the sect. After Lin Yi had recited more than 800 words of the Green Cloud Calming Spell, Xianijia finally did not hesitate anymore. He knelt down on the spot and saluted in fear and trepidation. So you're really the ancestor of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. I was blind to have offended you. Please punish me, Granduncle Master. It's nothing. Ignorance is not a crime. Get up. Lin Yi waved his hand faintly, but let out a sigh of relief inwardly. It was fortunate that he hadn't gambled wrongly. The art of calming heart that hadn't been of much use before was now of great use. Having a good memory really did have a lot of benefits. Yes, thank you, Granduncle Master. Xianijia immediately got up respectfully. His expression when looking at Lin Yi was no longer as superior as before. Instead, his attitude was extremely humble. The rules of the 3 sects in the North Island were strict. The person in front of him was a real ancestor senior who had mastered the original version of the Green Cloud Calming Spell. He might even know more mental cultivation methods that had been lost. He was a living treasure to the entire Green Cloud sect in the North Island. Xianijia had no choice but to be respectful. Looking at Xianijia's attitude, Lin Yi suddenly felt that his risk this time was too wise. Although failure would definitely cause Xianijia's hostility, high risk also meant high reward. Now that he had become Xianijia's grand-uncle master, the problem between the secular world and the Archaic Alliance would naturally be solved. Not only that, Xianijia's reaction also confirmed all of Lin Yi's previous speculations. At least one thing was confirmed, that the Green Cloud sect in the North Island of the Archaic Alliance and the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the North Island of the Heavenly Stage Island were indeed of the same origin. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to share the Green Cloud calming spell, which was an iconic mental cultivation method. Similarly, the Soaring sect and the Xuanji sect in the North Island were probably in the same situation. Lin Yi privately speculated that there should be two possibilities. Maybe the people who founded the three sects in the North Island of the Archaic Alliance actually came from the three pavilions in the North Island of the Heavenly Stage Island. That was why the names and mental cultivation methods of the three sects were exactly the same. Of course, the reverse was not completely impossible, but judging from the disparity in strength between the two sects, the possibility was really very small. It was impossible to say that a group of people came from the three sects in the North Island of the Archaic Alliance, ran to the Heavenly Stage Island, and suddenly increased their strength and brought the three pavilions to greater heights, right? However, the two together could only be regarded as the same possibility. Lin Yi had another more daring speculation in his mind. Perhaps in the distant Archaic era, the Heavenly Stage Island and the Archaic Small Underworld were originally the same place. Then one day, due to a sudden change, the place was split into two isolated planes. One of them was called the Heavenly Stage Island, and the other was called the Archaic Small Underworld. The sects in these two places were of the same origin, and should have been about the same level. However, because the spiritual chi in the Archaic Small Underworld was far inferior to that of the Heavenly Stage Island, it gradually declined. Day after day, year after year, it formed the current situation. Both of these possibilities existed, but Lin Yi was more inclined to the latter because if the ancestors of the Archaic Alliance came from the Heavenly Stage Island, they would inevitably leave behind clear records about the Heavenly Stage Island. Now that the Heavenly Stage Island was considered to be nothing more than a rumor in the Archaic Small Underworld, it could be seen that this possibility was not high. However, the second possibility was more likely to explain all of this. After the two sects split, they did not know the specific situation of the other side, and they might even think that the other side had already been destroyed. As time passed, naturally no one would mention it, and there would not be any clear records left, which led to the current situation. Chapter 5084. Ijia, although I'm from the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, I've been in the secular world for so many years. I don't want to meddle in other people's business anymore. Now that I've revealed my identity to you, I have to ask about the current situation of the Archaic Alliance. Tell me the general situation. Lin Yi seized the opportunity to ask. Yes. Xianijia was not surprised. He thought that since Lin Yi was the ancestral master of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, he should go back to the Blue Cloud sect to have a look after his identity was revealed. Of course, he had to learn more about the Archaic Alliance. He asked, "What do you want to know?" "Just tell me about the current power structure of the Archaic Alliance." Lin Yi said faintly. This was the most basic and important information. Only by understanding it in detail could he have a clear idea of the real strength of the Archaic Alliance. Knowing oneself and knowing the enemy would provide a reference for future countermeasures. All right. All the forces in the primordial underworld are divided into two types, the sects and the clans. Among all the sects and clans, the top 4 sects and clans are followed by the top 10 sects and clans, followed by some ordinary cultivation sects and clans, Xianijia explained. Oh? How do you differentiate the 4 major sects and families, the 10 small sects and families, and ordinary sects and families? Lin Yi asked carefully. Of course it's based on the strength of each sect and family. In addition to the basic number of disciples and strength, the most important criterion is the number of top masters in each sect and family. To put it bluntly, it's actually the number of nascent soul realm old monsters. Xianijia continued. Tell me more. This was the question that Lin Yi was most concerned about. It seemed that the most powerful people in the Archaic Alliance were in the nascent soul realm. However, he had to hear more about the exact number. Each of the 4 most powerful sects and families has at least 3 old monsters in the nascent soul realm, while the next 10 small sects and families have more or less 1 or 2 old monsters in the nascent soul realm. Just like our Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, we have 1 old monster in the nascent soul realm, who is the Grand Supreme Elder who is currently in closed-door training. That's why we can be one of the 10 small sects and families. If we don't have old monsters in the nascent soul realm, we can only be ordinary sects and families, Xianijia said. Linny couldn't help but feel shocked. Since the disciples of the Archaic Alliance who came to the secular world were only at the Foundation establishment stage, and even Xianijia, who was responsible for leading the team, was only at the early stage of Gold Core, he thought that even if there were nascent soul old monsters in the Archaic Alliance, there would be very few of them. However, according to what Xianijia said, there were at least 20 to 30 old monsters in the Archaic Alliance. This number was incomparable to the Heaven Stage Island, which was full of experts. However, it was much better than what Linny had imagined. According to what Xianijia said, the Archaic Alliance should not be underestimated. 2 years ago, old monsters in the nascent soul realm were people that Linny had to look up to. Even on the Heaven Stage Island, they could become the elders of a sect. He didn't expect that there were so many of them in the Archaic Alliance. Blue Cloud Sect is one of the 10 small sects and families. How are Rising Sky Sect and Xuanji Sect doing now? Linny asked. Rising Sky Sect has 2 old monsters in the nascent soul realm, which is also one of the 10 small sects and families. As for Xuanji Sect, it hasn't been doing well in the past 2 years. The original old monster in the nascent soul realm is missing, so it was removed from the 10 small sects and families. Now it can only be regarded as an ordinary sect. Xianijia sighed. The 3 sects of the North Island were like brothers. Although there were all kinds of open and secret fights between them, they were always united against outsiders. Although they could only be ranked as one of the 10 small sects and families, if the 3 sects of the North Island were put together, even the most powerful 4 sects and families would not dare to underestimate them. Now that Xuanji Sect had declined, it was inevitable that they would feel interdependent. By the way, there's a question I wanted to ask just now. Why did you add the North Island before the 3 sects? Is there another island in the Archaic Underworld? Linny asked thoughtfully. Oh, there's a question I wanted to ask just now. Why did you add the North Island before the 3 sects? Is there another island in the Archaic Underworld? Linny asked thoughtfully. Xianijia suddenly became suspicious. However, since Linny had just recited the entire original version of the green cloud calming technique to him, he did not suspect that Linny was a liar again. He just felt that Linny's question was strange. No, at least during my time it was only called Blue Cloud Sect, but I wouldn't add the North Island in front of it. Linny made up a story in a serious manner. He was sure that Xianijia did not know much about the Archaic era. After all, it was hard to verify this kind of thing, unless he could find the real seniors of the sect who survived from the Archaic era and confront them face to face. Even then, Linny could make up a story without thinking. No one would really care about this kind of thing that had nothing to do with core interests. Well? Xianijia was stumped by the question as expected. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. Although I'm already an elder in the Blue Cloud Sect of the North Island, I really don't know much about these things. I only know that I've been called the Blue Cloud Sect of the North Island since I was young. But it's normal. After all, geographically speaking, the 3 sects are located in the north of the Archaic Underworld. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's the North Island across the lake. Besides, the 3 sects of the North Island also belong to the Cultivation North Alliance. The Cultivation North Alliance. Linny was stunned. Yes, the Archaic Alliance is just a unified name. In fact, it's made up of 5 top forces. They are divided into East, West, South, North and Central. The 3 sects of the North Island and some other sects and families belong to the Cultivation North Island Alliance, also known as the Cultivation North Alliance. Meanwhile, the Snow Sword faction and the Thousand Blades faction belong to the Cultivation Central Alliance. The Qingquan sect and the Evil Warding sect belong to the Cultivation South Alliance. There's also the Cultivation ASEAN Alliance and the Cultivation West Alliance, Xianijia explained. Linny was completely speechless. Wasn't this just a copy of the 5 major islands of Heaven Stage? Other than some differences in details, the overall layout was almost the same. Now, he was even more convinced of his bold conjecture that the Heaven Stage Island and the Archaic Underworld came from the same mother's womb. Grandmaster, the strength of the Grand Five Alliance is determined by the strength of the sects and families under its jurisdiction. Other than that, the Grand Five Alliance also has exclusive forces. But I don't know much about them. Only by joining the elders of the Alliance can I get hold of these core secrets. My current level is far from enough, Xianijia said embarrassedly. Chapter 5085. The only reason he was able to become the person in charge of the training in the mortal world was because the people from the Archaic Alliance had their eyes on the top of their heads. They simply didn't place the mortal world in their eyes. If it really was a lucrative job, it wouldn't have fallen to him even in 10,000 years. All right, I got it. Linny nodded. Being able to learn so much from Xianijia was already a pleasant surprise. He only wanted to get a rough idea of the Archaic Alliance's strength. As for the deeper secrets, he didn't need to dig into them as it was useless at the moment. That's all I know about the power structure of the archaic underworld. I wonder if there's anything else you want to know? Xianijia asked respectfully. Not at the moment. I'll look for you in the future. Lin Yi waved his hand and went back to the topic. Let's talk about the secular world today. It's understandable that the Archaic Alliance wants to recruit new disciples with sufficient qualifications, but don't look for people blindly. If we make things clear, I believe many cultivators in the secular world will want to go. There's no need to make the relationship so tense as it will only backfire. Low-level cultivators always yearned for higher levels. This was common sense. Back then, Heavenly Stage Island had only sent Southern Aurora Polaris as a symbolic guide, but everyone still wanted to go in. Now, it was the same logic in the Archaic Alliance. It was just that Shui Jianfeng Yu Zhengliang and the others were too overbearing and unyielding. They didn't treat the cultivators of the secular world as humans, so naturally, no one was willing to follow them. You're right, Grandmaster. I didn't expect the sects to act so recklessly. I've repeatedly ordered not to disturb the order of the secular world, but it still turned out to be like this. I'll go back and make an appearance. I'll gather all the training disciples and forbid them from messing around in the secular world, Xianijia said sincerely. All right, thank you for your hard work. Lin Yi nodded, thinking that the identity of Grandmaster was indeed different. Although Xianijia was easy to talk to, he would not agree to this kind of thing immediately. He would definitely use all sorts of excuses. It was worth it that a mere jade cloud calming technique could be so useful. I'll take my leave now. I'll pay my respects to Grandmaster another day. Xianijia stood up and said. Take care, I won't be sending you off. Lin Yi smiled and personally escorted Xianijia out of the Supernatural Investigation Bureau. Looking at Xianijia's receding figure, Lin Yi let out a sigh of relief. Today's ordeal was finally over. What do you think? Did you deceive that person? Ling Shan said with a smile. She could tell from Lin Yi and Xianijia's expressions that today's negotiation was going to be a success. How could it be a lie? I'm just stating the facts and reasoning with him, okay? Lin Yi curled his lips. Really? Ling Shan's face was full of disbelief. Xianijia looked easier to talk to than Shui Jianfeng, but the superiority of the Archaic Alliance was ingrained in their bones. She didn't believe that Xianijia would be able to convince them so easily. Of course it's true. If it was someone else telling him this, it might be useless, but I'm his martial granduncle. If he doesn't listen to me, wouldn't that be disgraceful? Lin Yi asked with a smile. You're his master? Ling Shan's jaw almost dropped to the floor. Unbelievable? I don't really believe it myself, but he's willing to believe it. There's nothing I can do about it. Since he's so sincere, I'll just take the loss. It's all for the common world after all, Lin Yi said with a, who's going to hell if I don't go to hell face. Ha ha ha. Ling Shan almost couldn't hold back her laughter when she saw that funny face of his. She tricked him into becoming his master's master, and he still felt like he was taking the loss? Then what about this grand disciple of hers? Did he take advantage of her? You're a girl after all. Do you have to be that carefree in public? I can see you eating breakfast, Lin Yi said with a smile as he looked at Ling Shan's laughing face. Ah. Ling Shan jumped in fright and covered her mouth, only reacting when she saw Lin Yi's weird smile. She punched him, blushing as she lowered her head. If you don't like it, then I won't smile like this. Don't, I'm not used to a dumb girl like you smiling without showing your teeth. It's good to be carefree, you're cute when you're heartless, Lin Yi said. Who's heartless? Ling Shan grumbled, but her face was still filled with happiness. Evidently, she was overjoyed at the last 4 words. All right, let's get down to business. Send a summons to all the sects and families in the common world. We need to gather all of them. Xianijia's done talking with him, but we don't know how far he'll be able to keep the Archaic Alliance disciples in check. We need to prepare ourselves, Lin Yi said seriously. All right, should we notify the ancient sects? Ling Shan hesitated. The Bureau's jurisdiction was limited to the common world and the hidden world. They didn't have much control over the ancient sections. At most, they could just send a message if something happened, but they might not necessarily give them face. Of course, use my name to notify them. We'll use this chance to re-establish the Bureau's position in the common world. Lin nodded. If it weren't for this incident, the ancient sects might not have been willing to cooperate with the Bureau, and Lin might not even have been able to summon them. But now that they'd all lost to the Archaic Alliance, only Lin could stand up for them. They had to come even if they didn't want to. As expected, all the ancient sects, ancient, hidden and common worlds gathered when the Bureau sent out the summons on behalf of Lin. They all accepted Lin wholeheartedly, saying that they would only listen to the Cultivators' Union. Lin Yi's strength was already outstanding even before he went to Sky-class Island, and now he was so strong that they couldn't even look up to him. There was also the Archaic Alliance eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey. No one in charge of an area was an idiot, and they naturally knew what to choose. If they didn't hug Lin Yi's thigh tightly now, they'd be waiting for their names to be removed. You're really resourceful. I wouldn't even dare think about reporting to the Occult Investigation Department if it was before, but I'm actually so obedient this time. Ling Shan covered her mouth and smiled as she looked at the group of people trying to get to know each other. Times have changed, a wise man submits to circumstances. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Chapter 5086. I would have forgotten if you didn't mention it. Just let him go. After all, I've already talked to Xianijia. It's meaningless to detain him like this. Besides, I have to take care of his food and water. I don't want to cause trouble for your bureau, Lin Yi said casually. Deep in the mountain gate of Shenangjia, the first thing Xianijia did after returning was to report to the Archaic Alliance. Although he verbally promised Lin Yi to mediate, this kind of thing was not something he could decide alone. He had to ask for permission from the higher-ups. Otherwise, it would be unjustifiable, and the disciples of the archaic sects might not listen to him. Besides, for Xianijia, there was another more important thing, which was to report about Lin Yi to the Green Cloud sect of the North Island. This time they met a senior ancestor in the secular world, which was a big deal for the entire Green Cloud sect of the North Island. In particular, Lin Yi could completely recite the original version of the Green Cloud Calming Manual. This was of great significance to the Green Cloud sect of the North Island, which lacked foundation after the turmoil. If Lin Yi also remembered other advanced mantras, the value would be even more immeasurable. For such a big thing, the best way to report it was, of course, to face. Now that the archaic passage was opened, this condition was met, but Xianijia did not have the courage to do so. It was not that he did not want to, but he had limited spiritual jades. After all, it cost a lot of spiritual jades to send a person in, which was extremely rare in the small Jianghu of the archaic sect. Even Xianijia, an elder of the sect, could barely get a few pieces. It would be a waste to use them just for reporting. Therefore, after thinking about it, he decided to only send 2 letters in, one to the Archaic Alliance and one to the Green Cloud sect of the North Island. In this way, only a small piece of spiritual jades would be needed. One day later, the Archaic Alliance sent a reply. In principle, they agreed with Xianijia's proposal. After all, for them, as long as they could successfully recruit outstanding disciples, they had no intention to be enemies with the secular world. Therefore, what Xianijia did was just in line with their requirements. On the contrary, if the disciples were allowed to do whatever they wanted, things would inevitably get out of control, and even the entire Archaic Alliance would be enraged. As for the Green Cloud sect of the North Island, there was no reply yet. For one thing, the North Island was far away from the Archaic Passage. For another, such a big thing needed to discuss for a long time, so there would not be a result in a short time. With the approval of the Archaic Alliance, Xianijia immediately issued a summons to the senior brothers who stayed behind at the mountain gate, ordering them to summon their disciples back to Shenangjia. Although these senior brothers were doubtful, they chose to follow the order after seeing the Alliance's approval in Xianijia's hand. A few days later, the disciples who were scattered all over the secular world returned to Shenangjia one after another. Just like the beginning of the trial, they all gathered in the open space on the square, waiting for Xianijia's instructions. Disciples who are in the trial, I believe you all have heard about what happened recently. Some sects tried to recruit disciples ahead of others, but their actions were extremely inappropriate, which seriously damaged the image and reputation of the Archaic Alliance. Therefore, the Archaic Alliance has decided that from now on, all the disciples who are in the trial are not allowed to act recklessly. They must live in peace with the cultivation forces in the secular world, and no coercion is allowed. Violators will be severely punished. Xianijia announced loudly. Everyone could not help but look at each other. In fact, in addition to the Snow Sword sect and the Qingquan sect, many other archaic sects had been going overboard recently. In their eyes, it was just a matter of course. After all, they were the masters of the Foundation establishment realm from the Archaic Alliance. They did not need to be polite to these cultivators who were like ants in the secular world. According to Xianjia's words, if a group of masters of the Foundation establishment realm wanted to do something, they could not force them with their strength. They could only discuss with a group of lowly cultivators in the secular world in a friendly manner. Wasn't this a joke? Impossible. At this time, a voice was suddenly heard from the crowd. Everyone turned around and saw it was Shui Jianfeng, who had just returned from the Supernatural Investigation Bureau. What did you say? Xianjia's face turned gloomy. He was the person in charge of this trial in the secular world, and he even received the approval of the Archaic Alliance. How dare this Shui Jianfeng question the decision of the Archaic Alliance? Was he trying to rebel? Everyone from the other sects looked like they were watching a good show. Although they were a little dissatisfied with what Shui Jianfeng said, they would at most complain in private. They would never dare to question Xianjia to his face. After all, he was the martial uncle appointed by the Archaic Alliance to lead the team. They did not expect Shui Jianfeng to be so daring. I said it's impossible. Shui Jianfeng walked in front of everyone with a cold expression. Previously, he gave off a feeling that he was a high and mighty heavenly genius. However, after his dantian was crippled, his entire temperament changed, turning into a venomous snake that caused people to tremble in fear. This is the decision of the Archaic Alliance. How dare you defy it in public? Who gave you the guts? Xianjia said in an unfriendly tone. He also knew that the other sects might not really take him seriously as the martial uncle, but at least his authority was unquestionable. If he allowed Shui Jianfeng to contradict him in public, he would not be able to lead the team anymore. I didn't say I'm going to defy the decision of the Archaic Alliance. It's fine if you want to live in peace with the secular world. However, there's someone I will never let go of. He's the one who caused me to become like this. I'm irreconcilable with him. Shui Jianfeng said while gnashing his teeth. Now that his dantian was destroyed, he was completely a useless person. Normally, he would have to live with his tail between his legs. He would not dare to be as arrogant as he was now. After all, even if he used to be the big brother of Snowsword faction, he was just a useless person without any strength. He was useless to the sect now. He could only be abandoned by the sect like Wei Xinjin. However, Shui Jianfeng was different. He was the only son of the vice leader of Snowsword faction. Even if he lost his strength, he still had a powerful background. Moreover, although his dantian and meridians were destroyed, he could still recover as long as he could get a grade 5 recover pill. Therefore, he had the confidence and capital to be arrogant. He did not care about the others, but Lin Yi had to die no matter what. Everyone was confused. They only knew that Shui Jianfeng suffered a great loss and his dantian was destroyed. However, they did not know who dared to do such a thing. There were only two people who knew about it. One was Fei Yongli, and the other was Xianjia. Chapter 5087. It's only right to seek revenge when there's resentment. Even in the small Jianghu of the Archaic era, no one could say anything about it. Could it be that we have to swallow our anger in the secular world? How can there be such a logic in this world? Since you're so protective of that person, could it be that you're having an affair with him? Shui Jianfeng frowned suspiciously. Nonsense. No one will stop you if you want to take revenge, but the premise is that you can't destroy the stability of the whole situation. Otherwise, you'll be the sinner of the entire Archaic Alliance. Can you afford to bear this crime? Xianjia said angrily. Uncle Xian, please don't simply accuse me. I just want to seek justice for myself. How can I destroy the stability of the whole situation? How can I be the sinner of the Archaic Alliance? Shui Jianfeng was unconvinced. All right, since you insist on being unreasonable, I'll make it clear to you in front of everyone. Tell me, who do you want to take revenge on? Xianjia snorted coldly. Who else can it be? Of course, it's that primordial spirit cultivator. Shui Jianfeng gritted his teeth. As soon as he said that, the crowd couldn't help but whisper to each other. At this moment, a lady in the crowd was suddenly stunned. It was Lung Lung who rushed back after hearing the news. Primordial spirit cultivator? Lung Lung immediately reacted when she heard the word. She was extremely excited. Wasn't that Lin Yi? Could it be that Lin Yi was alright? Make it clear. Which primordial spirit cultivator? Xianjia said expressionlessly. The one who killed Yin Jiping and Sun Baimei of the evil warding sect, injured Yu Zhengliang and the others of the Qingquan sect, and destroyed my dantian. Is this clear enough, Uncle Xian? Shui Jianfeng said while suppressing his anger. Listening to the things he listed out, the crowd was in an uproar again. Lung Lung was stunned on the spot. Lin Yi had done so many amazing feats during this period of time. One had to know that each of these things were extremely difficult to accomplish. Without the strength of the Great Circle of Foundation establishment, it was basically impossible. Especially since Shui Jianfeng was known as the #1 expert in the Archaic Alliance's Foundation establishment realm. Even someone at the Great Circle of Foundation establishment realm would have a hard time crippling his Dantian. Only someone at the Golden Core realm would have a chance. In Lung Lung's impression, Lin Yi's strength was only at the peak of the early stage of foundation building. It was worlds apart from the Gold Core stage. After listening to these words, she suddenly felt incredulous. It had only been less than a month since they last parted. Could it be that Lin Yi's strength had advanced by leaps and bounds to such an extent? Such a thing was simply unimaginable. In the eyes of any normal person, the possibility of it happening was zero. Cold Lung could not help but suspect. Could it be that the primordial spirit cultivator that they were talking about was not Lin Yi but someone else? Alright, since you've made it so clear, I'll add one more thing. This primordial spirit cultivator is the president of the Cultivators Association in the secular world. At the same time, he's also the ancestral master of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island, who's left in the secular world since the primitive times. Xianijia said in a low voice. What? That primordial spirit cultivator is from the Green Cloud sect in the North Island? Everyone's jaws dropped when they heard that. They looked at each other and were stunned speechless. How could this be possible? Shui Jianfeng was also stunned. His expression suddenly became a little complicated. He thought that Lin Yi was just a primordial spirit cultivator from the secular world without any foundation. The Archaic Alliance would definitely not stop him from dealing with an unrelated outsider. However, this guy actually turned out to be the ancestral master of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. This was a tricky matter. Lung Lung, who was in the crowd, was also a little shocked when she heard that. However, she was more disappointed. In her opinion, since this primordial spirit cultivator was the ancestral master of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island, it would definitely not be Lin Yi. Because she had never heard that Lin Yi was related to the Archaic Alliance. Lin Yi did not know anything about the small primitive underworld at all. According to him, he went to a small island to learn martial arts, which had nothing to do with the small primitive underworld at all. After coming to this conclusion, the little hope that had just been ignited in Lung Lung's heart was instantly extinguished. Her heart was filled with melancholy. Why not? Do you think that primordial spirit cultivators appear out of thin air? If he's not the ancestral master left behind from the archaic era, how could he have such powerful strength as a primordial spirit cultivator? Is it strange that he's related to the Green Cloud sect in the North Island? Xianijia asked in return. Humph, even if he's from the Green Cloud sect in the North Island, so what? Is it because of this that he can do whatever he wants? Even if he destroyed my elixir field, I can't seek revenge from him? Your Green Cloud sect is just one of the 10 small sects and families. It's the same with our Snow Sword sect. You're not one of the 4 big sects and families. Since when did you become so overbearing? Shui Jianfeng said indignantly. Not to mention that it was Lin Yi. Even if Xianijia destroyed his elixir field, he could still seek revenge from Xianijia. Even the Green Cloud sect in the North Island could not intervene. If it was a private grudge, then it would be a private matter. If the sect intervened, it would be breaking the rules of the underworld. Besides, the strength of the Snow Sword sect was not weaker than that of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. Their overall strength was even stronger. Of course, if the 3 sects in the North Island united, the Snow Sword sect would not be able to do anything. Whether the Green Cloud sect in the North Island is overbearing or not is not up to you, a junior. Shui Jianfeng listened carefully. If the Archaic Alliance and the cultivation forces in the secular world want to coexist peacefully, not only the Archaic Alliance needs to restrain ourselves, but also someone needs to restrain the cultivation forces in the secular world. My primordial spirit martial uncle is the leader of the cultivation forces in the secular world. If you dare to touch him, you're challenging all the cultivation forces in the secular world. Once things get out of hand, the Archaic Alliance will never forgive you. Do you understand what I mean? Xianijia threatened. At this point, the meaning was obvious. From Xianijia's point of view, he did not want to make trouble, but he had said so much. If Shui Jianfeng still did not buy it, then he could not blame him for putting a label on him. At that time, he would be accused of openly defying the Archaic Alliance's decision. Even the Snow Sword sect could not guarantee his safety. Although Shui Jianfeng was eager to take revenge, he was not a fool after all. He could only snort to express his dissatisfaction, but he dared not say anything in front of so many people. Seeing that Shui Jianfeng finally chose to retreat, Xianijia secretly felt relieved. He glanced at the others and said, "Who else has an opinion on the Archaic Alliance's decision?" Everyone shook their heads. They were not as miserable as Shui Jianfeng. At most they would complain in private. Of course they could not oppose it openly. Chapter 5088. Since no one has any objections, you may leave. I'll discuss with the Primordial Spirit Martial Uncle Master in a few days, and we'll arrange for the recruitment of disciples from the secular world. During this period of time, if you cause any more scandals like bullying sects in the secular world, you'll have to bear the consequences. Xianijia looked at Shui Jianfeng meaningfully, then turned around and left. The group of primordial sect disciples looked at each other and immediately left. Although they would be restricted in their activities in the secular world in the future, and it was inevitable that they would feel resentful, not many of them had the guts to disobey the order, so they could only choose to obey. However, Shui Jianfeng was different. Although he was rendered speechless by Xianijia in front of everyone, he did not plan to listen to the order at all. He was the number one among the young generation in the Primordial Alliance. Now that his Dantian was destroyed, how could he swallow it? All Snow Sword Sect disciples gather. Shui Jianfeng suddenly shouted. The group of Snow Sword Sect disciples could not help but look at each other, but in the end they still gathered together obediently. Although this genius had become a cripple, his identity and background were still there. Furthermore, he was still the big senior brother in name, so they did not dare to ignore him. What orders does big senior brother have? The group of Snow Sword Sect disciples asked. Since that primordial spirit cultivator dared to destroy my Dantian, he's the sworn enemy of our Snow Sword Sect. He must die. Shui Jianfeng's eyes were filled with hatred. But he's the ancestral master of the Blue Cloud Sect in the North Island. Uncle Master XN also said that if we touch him, the consequences will be unimaginable, Fei Yangxing cautiously reminded. Humph, that old thing Xianijia is trying to protect him by all means. Since when does our Snow Sword Sect need to listen to the Blue Cloud Sect in the North Island? Shui Jianfeng curled his lips in disdain. What do you mean, senior brother Shui? Fei Yangxing probed. Although that primordial spirit cultivator has some cultivation, he's just a Foundation Establishment Great Perfection expert after all. There are so many disciples in our Snow Sword Sect. Can't we defeat him alone? Furthermore, he's not alone either. We just have to casually capture a few of the women and lackeys by his side, and it'll be sufficient to make him refrain from taking action. Shui Jianfeng said with a cold smile. Everyone was speechless when they heard this. Not long ago he was a proud and arrogant child of the heavens. But now he had actually fallen to the point where he didn't hesitate to use such a despicable method of taking hostages. It was truly lamentable. Shui Jianfeng glanced at their expressions and said with a snort, "Just do as I say. I'll take care of anything that goes wrong. Remember, the Essence Soul cultivator we're going to deal with is called Lin Yi, and he's currently in East Ocean City." What? He's Lin Yi? Lung Lung cried out in surprise when she heard that. She had already eliminated this possibility in her heart. She didn't expect to receive confirmation from Shui Jianfeng that it was actually Lin Yi. While Lung Lung was overjoyed, she suddenly became the focus of everyone. It was only then that everyone suddenly realized that she had unknowingly become a mid-stage foundation building expert. When she came out to train previously, she was only at the early stage of foundation building. How long had it been? Not even a month and a half had passed, and she had actually advanced 2 levels to the mid-stage of foundation building. She was indeed the core disciple who was recognized as the most promising to advance to the Golden Core realm. Her qualifications were simply invincible. Lung Lung's qualifications were indeed nature-defying, but it was impossible for her to advance so quickly just by relying on her qualifications. The medicinal pills that Lin Yi gave her were the key. Once she consumed the foundation-building pill and the foundation-building barrier-breaking pill, in addition to her qualifications advancing 2 levels, it was a matter of course. There was nothing to be surprised about. Shui Jianfeng was also shocked, but his focus was not on this. He walked over and frowned. Could it be that you know Lin Yi? Of course I know him. Back then, Sun Baimei coveted the treasure that Master passed down to me. He attacked me and injured me badly. Later on, when I was recovering, he came to kill me and rob me of my treasure. Thanks to Lin Yi, I managed to escape, Lung Lung explained. She only had one purpose in saying all these. She wanted to clear Lin Yi's name. So, you have a close relationship with him? Shui Jianfeng's face turned gloomy again. Senior brother Shui, I've been with Lin Yi for half a month. I can guarantee with my life that he's not a bad person. It's all because of him that I'm able to come back alive this time. Moreover, he gave me a bunch of medicinal pills which allowed me to advance and break through successfully. I can guarantee that he has no intention to be our snow sword sect's enemy. There must be some misunderstanding, Lung Lung quickly explained. Everything that Lin Yi had done, she still could not digest it until now. Since when did Lin Yi have such powerful strength and become the senior ancestor of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island? All kinds of doubts lingered in her mind. The image of Lin Yi in Lung Lung's mind became more and more unfathomable. However, even so, she did not think that Lin Yi could be the opponent of the entire Snow Sword sect. After all, the Snow Sword sect not only had a gold core expert, but also a nascent soul-old monster. If he was really identified as the Snow Sword sect's mortal enemy, Lin Yi's situation would bode ill rather than well. Therefore, no matter what, Lung Lung must dispel Xue Jianfeng's hysterical idea of revenge. Currently, Xue Jianfeng's Dantian was only destroyed. As long as there was a 5th grade recover pill, there would be room for negotiation. However, once he started to take revenge, the enmity would only grow bigger. Lung Lung did not care about Xue Jianfeng's life or death, but she was afraid that Lin Yi would be at a disadvantage. Junior sister Lung, our Snow Sword sect valued you so much and gave you so many cultivation resources. In the end, you actually colluded with the enemy. How should you be punished? Xue Jianfeng was interested in Lung Lung at first, but at this time, whoever dared to stop him from taking revenge on Lin Yi would be his enemy. He said angrily, misunderstanding? Even my Dantian was destroyed by him. How is this a misunderstanding? Senior brother Xue, a destroyed Dantian can be restored, but it's better to squash enmity than to keep it alive. You heard what Junior Uncle Xian said just now. Why do you have to make things unmanageable for a moment of anger? Lung Lung advised earnestly. If it's easy for you to say. Repairing the Dantian requires at least a 5th grade recover pill. Do you know how much it costs? Xue Jianfeng snorted coldly. Then, as long as I give you a 5th grade recover pill, will senior brother Xue stop finding trouble with Lin Yi? Lung Lung glanced at him and suddenly took out a pill from her bosom. 5th grade recover pill? Everyone was shocked when they saw it. Each of them looked at Lung Lung with eyes filled with shock. Even in the entire Snow Sword sect, there might not even be one such pill. She actually took it out so casually? Chapter 5089. Where did you get it from? Could it be that your master gave it to you? Xue Jianfeng couldn't hide the jealousy on his face. Even he, the only son of the vice sect master, didn't have it. Lin Yi gave it to me. Now that I'm using it to repair your Dantian, senior brother Xue should be able to keep the peace. Lung Lung secretly rejoiced that Lin Yi had given her a handful of elixirs back then. Otherwise, she really wouldn't know what to do now. If she allowed Xue Jianfeng to cause trouble, the consequences would be unimaginable. Unexpectedly, just when Lung Lung let out a sigh of relief, Xue Jianfeng suddenly snatched the grade 5 recover pill from her hand and shouted, "Disciples, listen up. Lung Lung colluded with the enemy and violated the sect rules. Lock her up." Lung Lung was innocent. How could she expect this person to be so despicable? He actually turned hostile after snatching the medicinal pill. The other Snow Sword sect disciples were stunned too. Even they didn't expect such a thing to happen. Xue Jianfeng had always been upright. Why did he suddenly become so sinister and despicable? What are you waiting for? Why aren't you taking her down? Don't tell me you want a rebel too? Xue Jianfeng said angrily. Yes. Everyone could only bite the bullet and surround Lung Lung. Although Lung Lung was a core disciple that was highly valued by the sect, her status was still far from Xue Jianfeng's. They had no choice. Lung Lung was immediately angry and anxious. However, she couldn't make a move in front of her fellow disciples. Moreover, she couldn't make a move either. Otherwise, she would be accused of betraying the sect. Then everything would be over. Senior brother Xue, please calm down. I think junior sister Lung is just stating the facts. She doesn't have the intention to become senior brother Xue's enemy. There's no need to make things so awkward between fellow disciples, right? Fei Yangxing bit the bullet and came forward to persuade. Compared to Xue Jianfeng, the deterrence that Lin Yi brought to him was much greater. Now was the perfect opportunity to sell a favor in front of Lung Lung. This way, even if Lung Lung and Lin Yi reunited in the future, she wouldn't say anything bad about him. Only then would he have the chance to keep his life. Colluding with my Snow Sword sect's mortal enemy, and now you're even speaking up for Lin Yi. Is this a matter of fact? Fei Yangxing, I still haven't settled the score with you for deserting the last time. You still have the face to stand out and plead for her? Xue Jianfeng looked at him with an unkind expression. Fei Yangxing was terrified. This was because Shui Jianfeng didn't know the truth. He thought that Fei Yangxing had escaped after Lin Yi destroyed his dantian and fainted. If Shui Jianfeng knew that Fei Yangxing didn't escape at all but became Lin Yi's spy, not only would Leng Leng be locked up today, but Fei Yangxing would also suffer. What are you waiting for? Shui Jianfeng glared at the disciples of the Snow Sword School again. Fortunately he was now a cripple. Otherwise he would have taken action himself. Everyone was about to make a move when Leng Leng suddenly said, "Hold on. Although you're the eldest senior brother, I'm still a core disciple. You have no right to imprison me. I want to see my master. This time I'll be the one leading the team in the common world. Everything will be decided by me." Shui Jianfeng smiled coldly. Seeing the hesitation on everyone's faces, he added, "Don't worry, I'll only imprison you for now. As for how to deal with you, I'll ask the higher-ups of the sect." At this point, the disciples of the Snow Sword School didn't hesitate any longer. They didn't want to get involved in a fight between core disciples. They followed Shui Jianfeng's orders and locked Leng Leng up. Leng Leng was unhappy, but she didn't make a move because she was from the same sect. After locking Leng Leng up, Shui Jianfeng immediately sent a letter back to the Snow Sword School, exaggerating the story. In his description he was undoubtedly the innocent victim. In the end it was all because of Leng Leng and Lin Yi that his dantian was destroyed. As for him threatening Lingshan and the others, he didn't mention it at all. 2 days later, the higher-ups of the Snow Sword School replied, ordering Shui Jianfeng to send Leng Leng back to the sect to be dealt with. At the same time, he was disqualified from the training in the common world. This result was within Shui Jianfeng's expectations, because this was a letter written by his father himself. His son's dantian was destroyed. As the vice-headmaster of the Snow Sword School, it would be strange if his father could swallow this humiliation. Even if Leng Leng was a core disciple, so what? Was Shui Jianfeng any worse than her? Shui Jianfeng was the #1 foundational practitioner in the Archaic Alliance. Putting aside whether he lived up to his name, being able to fight for such a huge title was a reflection of his strength. Not to mention that he had the vice-headmaster of the Snow Sword School as his father. His background was much stronger than Leng Leng's. Under such circumstances, even Leng Leng's master couldn't say much. At most, he could only try to reduce Leng Leng's punishment. It was impossible for her to get away scot-free. At least she wouldn't be able to get past the vice-headmaster. Look carefully. This is the decision of the sect's higher-ups. Does anyone have any objections? Shui Jianfeng took out the sect's reply and circulated it in front of everyone. Everyone immediately shook their heads. Not to mention that Leng Leng had always been cold and had an ordinary relationship with them. Even if they had a good relationship with her, they couldn't plead for her now. The sect was the most important. Since this was the decision of the sect's higher-ups, every disciple had to follow it unconditionally. "I'm not going back." Leng Leng panicked. Now that she knew Lin Yi's whereabouts, how could she return to the archaic underworld without meeting Lin Yi? One should know that the archaic passage would only open once every 1,000 years. If she was sent back this time, she might not be able to see Lin Yi again in this lifetime. Moreover, after the training in the secular world ended, the primeval trials would be next. This was the most important trial for the disciples of the various sections. Once they missed it, it meant that they might miss a great opportunity. How could she be sent back to the Snow Sword School to be punished at this time? This is the sect's decision. Do you think it's a joke? You won't go back just because you say so? Does your family own the Snow Sword School? Shui Jianfeng sneered and immediately left. "I'll go find Xenijia to make arrangements. You just wait for your punishment when you return." Leng Leng was angry and anxious at the same time. However, there was nothing she could do at this time. It was impossible even if she wanted to run away. The disciples of the Snow Sword School were watching her from all sides. With her foundation building intermediate stage strength, it was not enough for her to break out of the encirclement alone. Moreover, doing so would only give others an excuse, and the consequences would be even more unimaginable. Chapter 5090. On the other side, Shui Jianfeng found Xenijia and said, "Snow Sword faction has given the order to send Leng Leng back to the faction for punishment. I'm going to use the primordial passage. I'm sure you won't stop me, right?" Xenijia glanced at him and said, "That's your Snow Sword faction's internal matter. As long as you prepare the spiritual jades, I won't stop you." "Very well, I'll prepare the spiritual jades now." Shui Jianfeng immediately turned around and left. Although he was distressed that he had to pay a few spiritual jades to deal with Leng Leng, it was an official matter. He could get a new one from the faction. With his background, he could even get a few more spiritual jades by falsely claiming the number. Looking at Shui Jianfeng's back as he left, Xanijia shook his head disdainfully. What an arrogant young man. Before the accident, he still pretended to be a decent man. I really thought that he was a rare young talent. Unexpectedly, his true colors were revealed after his elixir field was destroyed. With such a narrow-minded character, even if his elixir field was restored, he would not be able to become a great person. Not long after Shui Jianfeng left, another person came to see him. It was Fei Yangxing. Why are you here? Does granduncle have any orders? Xianijia asked. In his eyes, Fei Yangxing was no longer a disciple of Snow Sword faction, but a representative of Lin Yi. After all, it was Fei Yangxing who brought him the message. You misunderstood, granduncle Xian. But this is indeed related to Senior Lin. Fei Yangxing paused and asked, was Shui Jianfeng going to send Leng Leng back to the primordial underworld? That's right. This is an internal matter of Snow Sword faction. I have no reason to stop him. What does this have to do with granduncle Xian? Xianijia asked curiously. You may not know this, granduncle Xian. Leng Leng and Senior Lin are close. If she is sent back to Snow Sword faction, Senior Lin will be furious. We have to think of a way, Fei Yangxing said worriedly. This. Xianijia was stunned and had a weird expression on his face. Although Lin Yi looked young on the outside, he was an ancient being from the ancient times in his heart. He did not expect Lin Yi to be with a little girl like Colt. Wasn't this like an old cow robbing the cradle? What's wrong? Fei Yangxing asked curiously. Oh, nothing. Xianijia hurriedly got rid of the weird thought in his mind and said with a bitter smile, the problem is that this is an internal affair of Snow Sword School. Even if I'm the leader of the team in the secular world this time, it's not appropriate for me to directly interfere with the affairs of other schools. This is a taboo. Fei Yangxing choked and said helplessly, then what should we do? Are we going to just watch as Leng Leng is escorted back to Snow Sword School? Xianijia thought for a while and said, how about this? Although I can't stop them directly, it's not a problem for me to delay them a little. Go and inform granduncle and ask him to come here as soon as possible. Okay, I'll go now. Fei Yangxing nodded and set off. An hour later, Shui Jianfeng's side was ready. He brought Lingyu and Colt to the teleportation formation of the primordial passage, but was stopped by Xianijia. What do you mean by this? Shui Jianfeng's face sank. Nothing. The primordial passage has sent 5 to 6 letters in the past 2 days. It needs to be maintained. If you want to use it, wait until tomorrow. Xianijia said indifferently. Shui Jianfeng almost went mad. Maintain the primordial passage? What kind of bullshit reason is that? Since when did Xianijia, a mere beginner gold core expert, know how to maintain the teleportation formation of the primordial passage? Granduncle Xin, this is the internal affairs of our Snow Sword School. You can't possibly stop us from doing this, right? This is not a small matter. Aren't you afraid that our Snow Sword School will tell on you? Don't you want to stand firmly in the primordial alliance ever again? Shui Jianfeng threatened with an unfriendly expression. What internal affairs? My duty is to maintain the primordial passage, but it has become the internal affairs of your Snow Sword School. How arrogant. Xianijia said in disdain. You know I'm not talking about this. You didn't maintain it earlier or later, but when I want to use it, you suddenly want to maintain it. Isn't it a little too obvious that you're abusing your position for personal revenge? Shui Jianfeng sneered. Although Xianijia was the granduncle leading the team, they were about to fall out. Naturally, their words were full of gunpowder. You're thinking too much. As the leading martial uncle for this trip in the secular world, maintaining the primordial passage is the most important of all responsibilities. Everything has already been arranged. I'm not so narrow-minded that I'll take revenge on a junior like you, Xianijia said faintly. Shui Jianfeng was speechless for a while. His face turned pale. He was no match for Xianijia in terms of experience and shrewdness when it came to arguing with an old man like Xianijia. After a while he could only say, all right, there's a limit to maintaining the primordial passage. When can I use it? 2 days later. Xianijia said casually. 2 days was his limit. If he insisted on delaying it, it would not be justifiable. All right, I'll wait for you for 2 days. Shui Jianfeng turned around and left with his people while gnashing his teeth. After taking 2 steps, he seemed to have thought of something and said loudly on purpose, all disciples of Snow Sword School, listen up. Keep a close eye on Leng Leng these 2 days. There must be at least 4 people on duty at all times. I'd like to see who's so daring to meddle in the internal affairs of Snow Sword School. Xanijia was speechless and twitched his mouth. This guy actually thought that he was delaying to take the opportunity to let Lung Lung go. Did he look so stupid? 2 days passed in a flash. Shenangjia Mountain Gate was peaceful. Shui Jianfeng brought his people to the primordial passage again. The first thing he said when he saw Xanijia was, "What excuse do you have now to delay?" "Delay? When did I delay you? You're deceiving yourself." Xanijia glanced at him indifferently, but he was a little anxious. If Lin Yi did not come at this time, he had no reason to continue delaying. Xanijia was anxious, but Lung Lung was even more anxious than him. She did not know that Fei Yangxing had already sent a message to Lin Yi. At this moment she was having a final fierce struggle in her mind. Should she continue to endure and be escorted back to Snow Sword School, or should she resist without caring about anything? Thinking about it carefully, she realized that she couldn't bear the consequences of either of these two choices. She could either say goodbye to Lin Yi forever, or she could be accused of betraying the sect. There had to be one of the two. Chapter 5091. Seeing that the primordial passage was getting closer and closer, Lung Lung was anxious. She clenched her fists tightly and was about to strike. Between the Snow Sword School and Lin Yi, she chose Lin Yi in the end. In order to see Lin Yi again, she would not hesitate to bear the crime of betraying the school. However, just when she could not help but strike, a familiar voice came from behind. "Wait, she can't leave." "Lin Yi?" Lung Lung quickly turned around and looked at the familiar figure that she had been yearning for day and night. She could not help but burst into tears. In fact, she did not ask for much. As long as she could see Lin Yi for the last time and let her know that Lin Yi was safe and sound, it was enough. "It's you?" Shui Jianfeng had never thought that Lin Yi would come here. He looked at Xanijia, who looked indifferent, and Fei Yangxing, who appeared behind Lin Yi. Suddenly he understood everything and scolded, "Fei Yangxing, you traitor!" Fei Yangxing was shocked. Seeing Shui Jianfeng's murderous look, he quickly hid behind Lin Yi. When he heard that Shui Jianfeng brought people to the primordial passage when he returned to the mountain gate, he immediately led Lin Yi here without thinking too much. He did not expect to be called a traitor by Shui Jianfeng on the spot. Of course he was a traitor. Lin Yi did not care about Shui Jianfeng at all. He walked to Lung Lung in front of everyone and smiled, "Wait for me, I'll be done soon." She didn't know why, but from the moment she saw Lin Yi, Lung Lung's heart immediately calmed down. It was as long as Lin Yi was here, she wouldn't have to be afraid even if the sky fell down. She felt an unprecedented sense of security. However, she still pursed her lips and curled up the corner of her mouth. She said softly, "You're bragging." Looking at the two flirting as if there was no one else around, Shui Jianfeng almost went mad. He scolded the disciples of the Snow Sword School, "Are you all blind? This is the Lin Yi who crippled my Dantian. He is an enemy of our Snow Sword School. Hurry up and kill him. How dare you? Don't blame me for being merciless if anyone dares to harm the Grand Uncle Master of the Green Cloud sect of the North Island." Xanijia immediately stood up and snorted. The disciples of the Snow Sword School were shocked. If Xanijia was not here, they might have been instigated by Shui Jianfeng to attack Lin Yi. But now, facing Xanijia, an expert in the early stage of Gold Elixir realm, what could they do even if they had more people? Moreover, if they were to compare the number of people, the Green Cloud sect of the North Island was not less than the Snow Sword School at all. They were both one of the 10 small sects and families. In terms of strength, they were almost on the same level. If necessary, they could even mobilize the people of the Soaring sect and the Xuanji sect. The 3 sects of the North Island had always been on the same side. The Snow Sword School might not be able to afford to offend them. Seeing the other disciples of the Snow Sword School were scared, Shui Jianfeng was so angry that he gnashed his teeth. He could not help but want to attack by himself. However, he was scared by Lin Yi's glance. Thinking of the time when he was tortured by Lin Yi, his heart could not help but tremble. Facing Lin Yi alone was simply courting death. "Oh, it seems that you have recovered. You snatched the grade 5 recover pill that I gave to Colt. You didn't even say thank you. Now you want to kill me?" said Lin Yi with an unfriendly expression. On the way here he had heard everything from Fei Yangxing. He did not find it strange that Shui Jianfeng could recover his Dantian and meridians, nor did he take it to heart. Shui Jianfeng might be very strong in the eyes of others, but in his eyes he was just a weakling. A weakling that was not even worth a fart. "How dare you? You destroyed my Dantian and became the mortal enemy of the Snow Sword School, and you still dare to come here? Do you really think that there is no one in the Snow Sword School who can deal with you?" said Shui Jianfeng, flustered and exasperated. "If you think that someone can deal with me, just go and call him over. I'll wait here." Lin Yi smiled coldly. Although he was only at the peak of the Foundation establishment level, he was still a powerful existence comparable to the giants of the mountain opening period. He was not even afraid of the Snow Sword School on the Heaven Island, so how could he be afraid of a knockoff of the Ancient Alliance? You. Shui Jianfeng was speechless. He wanted to call his father over to vent his anger, but the problem was that without the approval of the Ancient Alliance, it was impossible. Apart from Xianijia, the leader of the Snow Sword School, only the disciples in the Foundation establishment level could participate in the training in the secular world. It was an irrefutable rule that no one could defy. You can't call me over? Then I'll give you a piece of advice. I've always had a bad temper, so don't complain in front of me. Otherwise, I'll accidentally destroy your dantian again, or maybe just stomp you to death. That wouldn't be good. Don't you think so? Lin Yi said with a smile on his face. Don't you agree? How dare you threaten me? Shui Jianfeng was so angry that his mouth became crooked. He pointed at Xianijia and said, You're the leader of the Snow Sword School. This guy is threatening me in public and you're not going to do anything? Threaten? Where's the threat coming from? Granduncle Master is just discussing with you nicely. How is this a threat? Xianijia snorted disdainfully. Shui Jianfeng had just recovered his dantian and meridians with the help of the 5th grade recover pill. His body was far from recovering to its normal state. He was so angry that he almost fainted. He managed to hold his breath and said, All right, then you guys just wait and see. Guards, send Lung Lung back to the Snow Sword School first. I'm sorry, Lung Lung has been requisitioned by me. She can't leave, said Lin Yi. What did you say? This is the internal affairs of the Snow Sword School. According to the rules of the ancient underworld, we can fight back on the spot no matter who interferes. Xianijia, even you can't say anything about this, right? Shui Jianfeng snorted. Xianijia frowned. It was indeed inappropriate for him to stand up for Lung Lung in this situation. He could only look at Lin Yi and let Lin Yi make the decision himself. You're thinking too much. This isn't just the internal affairs of the Snow Sword School. It's also related to the entire secular world and the Archaic Alliance. How can you send her back just because you want to? Lin Yi curled his lips in disdain. Bullshit. She's just an ordinary disciple. How is she related to the entire secular world and the Archaic Alliance? Shui Jianfeng retorted. Chapter 5092. What does this have to do with Lung Lung? Shui Jianfeng snorted coldly. Of course it has something to do with it. Naturally, there will be a middleman for such a big matter. I represent the secular world's cultivation forces, Ijia represents the Immemorial Alliance, and Lung Lung is the middleman chosen by both sides. Without her, this disciple selection can't be held. This is going against the entire Immemorial Alliance and the secular world. Are you sure your Snow Sword sect has the guts to do so? Lin Yi asked. This. Shui Jianfeng didn't know how to respond for a moment. He wanted to forcefully escort Lung Lung back to be punished out of selfishness. If he really investigated it, it would be untenable. Now that Lin Yi had pulled out the title of the middleman, if he still insisted on doing things his own way, he would definitely make a big deal out of it. At that time, things would get out of hand. Let's go. Lin Yi no longer paid attention to this clown. He smiled and pulled Lung Lung's hand and left. Shui Jianfeng couldn't help but want to stop them. However, when he was glanced at by Lin Yi, he immediately retreated back in fear. His expression was brilliant. Of course, he was unwilling to just watch the two leave, but what else could he do? At this time, the immemorial passage had been activated. Shui Jianfeng even wanted to go back himself. As long as he made up some excuses and asked his father to go to the Immemorial Alliance, there might be a chance to find a gold core expert to deal with Lin Yi. However, this kind of thing couldn't be guaranteed to succeed. The key was that Lin Yi was the martial uncle of the Northern Island Azure Cloud sect. Since the Snow Sword sect could call for help, the Northern Island Azure Cloud sect could naturally call for help as well. Moreover, Xianijia was the martial uncle who led the team. If he wanted to use this method to deal with Lin Yi, the success rate was very slim. After thinking about it, Shui Jianfeng could only choose to endure. He wanted to take revenge, so he could only endure. He could only wait for the right opportunity to wash away his shame. On the other side, Lin Yi and Lung Lung were strolling hand in hand on the path of the mountain gate. They were enjoying the primitive scenery of Shenangjia while enjoying the two of them. Lung Lung could not help but sneak a peek at Lin Yi. At this moment, she actually had thousands of words to say, but she did not know what to say. She had a stomach full of words, but she did not know how to express them. She could only silently let Lin Yi lead her along. You. The two of them suddenly opened their mouths at the same time. Then they were both stunned for a moment. They looked at each other and smiled. Then they said at the same time, "Then you go first. The two of us are really in sync, too tacit." Linny couldn't help but laugh and then said, "How have you been recently?" "All I did was find a secluded cave to cultivate. I relied on the pills you gave me to level up 2 times in a row. Other than that, there was nothing special." Cold smiled coldly. Leveling up 2 levels in a row was a great thing for most people, but it was nothing compared to Lin Yi's. "You're different though. You've done so many shocking things and now you're the founder of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. What's going on?" Lin Yi asked impatiently. "What's going on? Actually, this is all thanks to you." Lin Yi smiled. "Thanks to me?" Lung Lung blinked her eyes in confusion. "Yes. Originally, I was seriously injured that time. This primordial spirit was about to collapse, so I wanted to quickly release myself and return to my original body. After cultivating for a while, I would project a new primordial spirit to the secular world. I didn't expect that the charcoal you left me would actually contain unparalleled divine sense energy. Not only did it help me to restabilize my primordial spirit that was about to collapse, but it also helped me to quickly restore my strength to the great completion of Foundation establishment. It's a good thing," Linny sighed. "If it wasn't for Lung Lung, this piece of starring charcoal, the secular world would have been in a mess. It's good that it's useful to you. To be honest, that thing is actually useless to me. At most, it can only nourish my divine sense a little. It's precious and useless. At first, I planned to leave it in the primordial little Jianghu and not bring it out. Fortunately, I didn't do that. Otherwise, something big would have happened." Lung Lung couldn't help but rejoice. This thing is indeed useless to a Foundation establishment expert. However, when you reach a certain level, its value will naturally be reflected. This is a priceless treasure," Linny said seriously. In Lin Yi's opinion, it was actually not a good thing to give this thing to a Foundation establishment expert like Lung Lung. It was just that Lung Lung didn't know how to use it. Otherwise, if she really knew how to use it, it might cause a tragedy. After all, the divine sense energy contained in it was too huge. If the primordial spirit wasn't strong enough, it would definitely be crushed in an instant. If the primordial spirit was light, the primordial spirit would be injured. If the primordial spirit was heavy, it would die on the spot. However, when one reached the nascent soul stage, especially his current profound ascension stage, the divine sense energy contained in this thing was truly a priceless treasure. "Then I'll leave it for you," Lung Lung said casually. After going through life and death together last time, the relationship between her and Lin Yi was no longer an ordinary friendship. At least in her heart, she would never have another man in this life. That was why she felt at ease when Lin Yi gave her the medicinal pill. Similarly, she wouldn't be stingy with her own things for Lin Yi, even if this was a treasure passed down to her by her master. "Okay, then I'll keep it." Lin Yi didn't hold back. He wouldn't be stingy with his own people, and similarly, he wouldn't be polite with his own people. "Now can you tell me who you are? How did you become the ancestor of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island?" Lung Lung asked again. Ever since she learned about Lin Yi's news, she had been thinking about it for the past few days. She could more or less guess that Lin Yi had recovered. However, he suddenly became the ancestor of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. This was puzzling. "If I say that this is a lie, would you believe me?" Lin Yi said with a faint smile. "Impossible. You might be able to lie to others about this kind of thing, but Martial Uncle Xin is the elder of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. You can't lie to him." Lung Lung shook her head decisively. "Alright, actually it's not purely a lie. With my origin, it's not a big deal for Xianijia to call me Martial Uncle." Lin Yi nodded. "So you're saying that you're really a primordial spirit left behind from the immemorial era?" Lung Lung suddenly had a horrified expression as if she was looking at a monster. Although she had now confirmed the relationship between them, she still couldn't accept that Lin Yi was really such an ancient existence. "Do I look like one to you?" Lin Yi laughed. Chapter 5093. However, if Lin Yi was not a primordial spirit realm old monster left behind from the primordial age, how could he be related to the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island? "Yeah, I actually told you about my background a long time ago, but you thought I was joking and didn't take it to heart at all." Lin Yi smiled. "You mean the island where you learned martial arts?" Lung Lung asked. "That's right. Actually, you should have heard of the name of that island. It's the legendary Heaven Stage Island." Lin Yi decided to reveal the truth. "What? Heaven Stage Island? Isn't that just a rumor?" Lung Lung was shocked. "It's not a rumor. I came back from Heaven Stage Island. According to my speculation, Heaven Stage Island has a deep relationship with your primordial underworld." Lin Yi nodded. "Deep relationship? Where did that come from?" Lung Lung was a little surprised. The existence of Heaven Stage Island was shocking enough, but it actually had a deep relationship with the primordial underworld. Heaven Stage Island is divided into 5 major islands: North, South, East, West, and Central. The North Island is led by the 3 major pavilions, namely Soaring Sky Pavilion, Mysterious Pavilion, and Blue Cloud Pavilion. The Central Island has Snow Sword Faction, Thousand Blades Faction, and other sections. Don't you think it sounds familiar? Linny smiled. How is this possible? Lung Lung was stunned. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? Not only that, the Heaven Stage Island's North Island's Blue Cloud Pavilion's entry-level heart cultivation method is Green Cloud Heart Calming Technique. The Primordial Alliance's North Island's Blue Cloud sect also has the Green Cloud Heart Calming Technique. It might be a coincidence that the names are the same, but it can't be a coincidence that even the cultivation method is the same, right? Linny said. According to what you said, it's really a deep relationship. Lung Lung was stunned. It took her a while to digest Lin Yi's words. She could not help but ask, "Did you tell Uncle Master XN about Heaven Stage Island?" "Not yet. Before I figure out what's going on with the Archaic Alliance, I don't plan on making it public. Keep it a secret from them for now." Lin Yi shook his head. This was not a trivial matter. It was hard to predict whether it would be a blessing or a curse if he spread it out before he really figured it out. At the moment, it was better to confirm his identity as the ancestor of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island first. At least in terms of dealing with the affairs of the secular world, this identity was the most advantageous. All right. Lung Ling nodded. She didn't think too much about it. Since Lin Yi asked her to keep it a secret, she would keep it a secret for now. The two of them talked for a while and returned to the mountain gate when it was getting dark. Xianijia had already asked people to prepare a dinner. Although this place was inaccessible, it was natural and primitive. It was convenient to get local ingredients, so the dinner was delicious. "Uncle Master, there's something I'd like to ask. In fact, it's not only me, but also the higher-ups of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. What's your plan in the future? Are you going to stay in the secular world or go to the small Jianghu of the Archaic era with me?" Xianijia asked carefully during the dinner. Since he reported the situation last time, after 5 days he finally got a reply from the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. After learning about the existence of Lin Yi, the ancestor of the Archaic era, the whole Blue Cloud sect in the North Island was in an uproar. Especially after knowing that there was a complete version of the Blue Cloud calming technique, they were even more ecstatic. With the existence of such a living fossil ancestor, the people of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island definitely wanted to invite Lin Yi over. After all, as long as the Uncle Master taught them a few mental cultivation methods, they would be priceless treasures. But the problem was that Lin Yi's current identity was the president of the Cultivators Association in the secular world. What if he was unwilling to go to the small Jianghu of the Archaic era? Don't you have a year of experience in the secular world? Let's talk about this later. I haven't thought about it yet. Lin Yi said non-committally. If the conditions allowed, he didn't mind going to the small Jianghu of the Archaic era. But now he was just a primordial spirit projected here. Who knew if he would suddenly collapse when he went to the small Jianghu of the Archaic era? Moreover, even if he had the Star Ink Stone to replenish his divine sense energy, no one knew how long he could last. Maybe a year was the limit. Well, okay. Xianijia couldn't help feeling a little disappointed, but he didn't dare to say anything more. Although Lin Yi was just a primordial spirit in the peak of Foundation establishment, he was the ancestor of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island after all. It was a big crime to disrespect a teacher, not to mention that he was an Uncle Master whose seniority was unknown. Since I'm here, let's talk about the disciple selection contest. I've already spread the news. All the cultivation forces in the secular world have agreed to send their disciples to participate. You can decide the time and place. Lin Yi turned and said, "Okay, it's better to do it sooner rather than later. How about the day after tomorrow? As for the place, let's set this mountain gate," Xianijia suggested. "Revealing your rendezvous point to the outside world like this, aren't you afraid of attracting unnecessary trouble?" Lin Yi asked, surprised. "Uncle Master, you must be joking. Apart from masters like you, other cultivation forces in the secular world can only be bullied by the disciples of the Archaic Alliance. There won't be any trouble," Xianijia said disapprovingly. That's true." Although that was what he said, Lin Yi didn't take it seriously. The strength of the cultivators in the secular world was indeed far inferior to that of the Archaic Alliance. However, these people from the Archaic Alliance made the most common mistake of cultivators: they didn't take ordinary people seriously. The reason why the secular world was because it was a world of mortals, especially a world with advanced technology. If they were to really become enemies, any high-tech weapons would be enough to make the high and mighty Archaic Alliance cultivators suffer. If they were to really push them into a corner and fire a nuclear bomb, the people here might be fine, but their formations and bases might be gone. Xianijia and the others did not have a deep understanding of the technology in the secular world. Once they understood what advanced technology was, they would not dare to be so careless and unscrupulous anymore, especially after they had experienced hardships. After the discussion, Lin Yi gave Lingshan a call, asking the department to organize the disciple selection contest. Not only would they be able to maintain order, but they'd also be able to establish the department's authority. It was killing two birds with one stone. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye, and practitioners from all over the common world gathered in Shenangjia. The ancient, hidden and common world sects and houses were all gathered once more, led by the secret investigation department into the depths of Shenangjia. Lingshan was the one leading the group. Chapter 5094. And when they saw the 78 Foundation establishment experts from the Archaic Alliance, they couldn't help but gulp. To them, any random Heavenly Tao Realm expert was enough of a deterrent. But with 78 Foundation establishment experts standing together, the pressure was enough to leave anyone dumbfounded. They couldn't help but feel lucky that Lin Yi had come out to mediate the situation, otherwise all the practitioners in the mortal world would have been wiped out. The Archaic Alliance really was a force to be reckoned with. Due to the previous conflicts and disturbances, the cultivators in the secular world didn't have a good impression of the Archaic Alliance. But now that they felt the difference in strength, they couldn't help but feel a sense of respect. If they joined the Archaic Alliance, they would have a chance to become a Heavenly Tao expert like these people. That would be a rare opportunity. At this moment, everyone finally began to look forward to joining the Archaic Alliance. Originally, many of them were just here to go through the motions so that they wouldn't cause trouble for their sects or families. But now they sincerely hoped that they would be chosen. Under Lingshan's lead, the practitioners sat down in the square, waiting for the selection to begin. Lingshan, on the other hand, ran to Lin Yi's side, looking at Lung curiously. "Who's this?" Lin Yi blushed, pinching his nose awkwardly. "This is Lung, a disciple of the Snow Sword School of the Archaic Alliance. I told you guys before, she's one of us." "One of us?" Lingshan paused, understanding quickly. She couldn't help but roll her eyes at Lin Yi, extending a hand to Lung. "Nice to meet you, I'm Lingshan, the Vice Director of the Mortal World's Supernatural Investigation Department. I'm also one of this big Playboy Radish's people. Please take care of me in the future." "Big Playboy Radish?" Lung giggled, grabbing Lingshan's hand and mimicking her, "Please take care of me in the future." She had a cold personality, but she didn't push Lingshan away. After all, Lin Yi had told her about this 2 days ago, and the archaic Jianghu was similar to Sky-class Island. It wouldn't be strange for a man as strong as Lin Yi to have many women. If Lin Yi didn't have any, she'd be suspicious of Lin Yi's sexual orientation. As Lin Yi was having his family meeting, Xianijia had officially started the first round of selection. The rules were simple: the disciples from the archaic sects would be chosen, and if the practitioners weren't chosen by any of the archaic sects, they'd be eliminated and be sent home. As for those who were chosen, they'd be able to stay and enter the second round. If they were talented enough to be chosen by a few archaic sects, it'd be up to them. The disciples sent by the archaic sects weren't just there to make up the numbers, they were all elites. Otherwise, the disciple selection would be meaningless, and the Archaic Alliance would definitely use this opportunity to make things difficult for them. As a result, after the first round, there were 33 people left. This result was far beyond Xianijia's expectations. The archaic sects had very strict standards when it came to disciple selection. He'd expected 7 or 8 to pass the first round, and it'd be a good result. The common world was indeed full of talented people, and it was only because the chi in the air was too thin that it declined. Otherwise, their overall strength wouldn't be much weaker than the Archaic Alliance. After sending away the failed practitioners, Xianijia was about to announce the rules of the second round of selection when Shui Jianfeng suddenly jumped out and shouted, "Wait, since this is the disciple selection that the Archaic Alliance and the common world have agreed on, the common world can't just handle it casually, right? Otherwise, where would the Archaic Alliance's face be? There are 33 people left in the first round, and even your Snow Sword sect has chosen 4 of them. How is this handling the matter?" Xianijia frowned and said in a deep voice, "Having more people doesn't mean they're sincere. Martial Uncle Xian, let me ask you a question first. If someone becomes a heaven stage full cycle expert in the common world, is this person considered a talent with unlimited potential? Shui Jianfeng asked with a deep meaning. Of course. Xianijia nodded. With the thin qi in the common world and the poor cultivation resources, it was at least 100 times harder to reach heaven stage full cycle than it was in the Archaic Alliance. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that one had unlimited potential. If the common world is really sincere, then shouldn't these people participate in the disciple selection? But as far as I know, there are still many heaven stage full cycle experts who aren't here today, and those people are his subordinates. Martial Uncle Xian, as the martial uncle leading the team, shouldn't you do something about it? Shui Jianfeng pointed the spearhead at Lin Yi. This. Xianijia looked at Lin Yi in a difficult position and didn't know how to answer. The Archaic Alliance and the common world were sincerely cooperating to hold this disciple selection. At least logically speaking, those heaven stage full cycle experts shouldn't be absent. Shui Jianfeng, you really don't change. Last time you suffered because of this. It's only been a few days and you've already forgotten the pain. Don't you have a good memory? Lin Yi looked at Shui Jianfeng in an unfriendly manner. The scene of him being one-sidedly trampled by Lin Yi was still vivid in his mind. Shui Jianfeng subconsciously took a few steps back in fear. After a while he reacted with a flushed face and snorted coldly, "Humph, this is the Archaic Alliance's territory. If you dare to act recklessly, you'll be challenging the Archaic Alliance in public. Everyone has the right to punish you. This is Shenangjia. Since when did it become the Archaic Alliance's territory? But it seems that you still have a good memory. It seems that the beating last time wasn't in vain." Lin Yi curled his lips with a smile that didn't seem like a smile. There's a basic rule to this disciple selection, and that's that it's fair and voluntary. It's up to the individual to decide whether they want to come or not. Otherwise, the selection would be meaningless. If you can't even understand that, then you really have a problem with your intelligence. Hurry up and find a place to top up, or you'll get a negative score. Lin Yi said. Chapter 5095. Well, they were interested in the Archaic Alliance at first. But after seeing you, a genius from the Archaic Alliance, they all felt that the Archaic Alliance was just SOSO. They were afraid that they would end up like you and refused to participate in the disciple selection meeting. So you can't blame me for this. Lin Yi said seriously. I see. You're the one who ruined the image of our Archaic Alliance. How dare you bring this up? I'd like to tell the Alliance about your achievements, Shui Jianfeng. Xianijia added insult to injury. Shui Jianfeng almost vomited blood. He pointed at Lin Yi and said, "What about those unconscious female cultivators? You can't say that they didn't want to come, can you? They could only wait for death if they stayed in the secular world. Only by going to the Archaic Alliance can they have a chance to recover. You forced them to stay in the secular world because of your own selfish desire. You're not going to blame it on me, are you? You're so smart. I really have to blame it on you. I'm their guardian, but I don't trust your character. If I send them to the Archaic Alliance, who knows if you'll do something shady?" Lin Yi looked like he was looking at a scumbag. Fuck. Shui Jianfeng really coughed up blood this time. Everyone was staring at him with all sorts of weird looks and he almost fainted on the spot. He was just using this opportunity to annoy Lin Yi. How did he turn into a beast that everyone hated? Looking at Lin Yi's disgusting face, Shui Jianfeng wanted to fight with this bastard to the end. Unfortunately, he did not have the strength to do so. There was only one way to deal with Lin Yi, which was to mobilize all the disciples of the Snow Sword School to attack him. However, Lin Yi was the senior ancestor of the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. Xianijia would definitely not stand by and do nothing. What could he do? Are you done with the farce? If you're done, get out of my way. Don't get in the way of me hosting the disciple selection meeting. Xianijia glared at Shui Jianfeng. Shui Jianfeng let out a cold snort. He knew that he wouldn't be able to obtain any benefits if this went on. He could only awkwardly retreat to the side and think of another plan. Then I'll go back first? Lingshan blinked at Lin Yi. She was here purely as the vice director of the investigation department to maintain order, just like Qintian and the others. She didn't even think about joining the Archaic Alliance. If she really wanted to, she could have just gone to Sky Class Island with Lin Yi. Why go to the Archaic Alliance? Just when Lin Yi was about to nod, Xianijia suddenly said, "Granduncle, Deputy Director Song doesn't have to leave in a hurry. It's not too late to make a decision after hearing the rules of the second round." "Oh, let's wait for a while." Lin Yi looked at Xianijia in surprise. He didn't care much about the Archaic Alliance's disciple selection. As long as both sides coexisted peacefully, he didn't pay much attention to the selection process. From what Xianijia said, could it be that the second round of selection wasn't as simple and direct as the first? Xianijia nodded and turned to the crowd. Everyone, the fact that you've passed the first round of selection is an affirmation of your potential. Although it doesn't mean that you've joined the Archaic Alliance, as a reward for passing the first round of selection, I believe that you'll benefit a lot from the second round of selection, regardless of whether you're successful or not. Everyone's eyes lit up. They were a little confused about the first round, and they didn't even know what Xianijia was looking at. The reward that Xianijia was talking about made them excited. The Archaic Alliance couldn't possibly be something simple. Could it be that they were going to give each of them a treasure from the Archaic Alliance? However, what Xianijia said next quickly shattered their fantasies and made them even more excited. Everyone, please don't misunderstand. I won't give you any treasures or resources, but I'll give you an opportunity that you've been dreaming of, a chance to break through to the Foundation Establishment realm. Foundation Establishment realm. The crowd was in an uproar. Everyone's breathing became heavy. Even if they had no concept of the Foundation Establishment realm in the past, after the emergence of the Archaic Alliance, everyone knew what it meant. It was the legendary Heavenly Tao. Not only the secular cultivators but even Lin Yi couldn't help but be moved. He didn't expect the Archaic Alliance to be so generous. He had underestimated them before. Don't be surprised. The Archaic Small Underworld is the place that every cultivator dreams of. To become an official disciple of any Archaic sect, you must at least have the strength of the Foundation Establishment realm. Now that you've passed the first round of selection, you're now the prospective disciples of your respective sections. You'll be given the beginner's mental cultivation method of your respective sects, and you'll be going to a place with abundant spiritual qi to break through to the Foundation Establishment realm. If you're able to break through before the Archaic Passage closes, you'll become an official disciple. Xianijia introduced. Beginner's mental cultivation method? We already have our own mental cultivation method. It's useless to give us another mental cultivation method, right? The secular cultivators couldn't help but wonder. Everyone knew that one's mental cultivation method couldn't be changed at will, especially if one were to practice two mental cultivation methods at the same time. The consequences would be unimaginable. If it's light, one would be injured, and if it's severe, one would be possessed by the devil or even die on the spot. Under normal circumstances, you can't change your mental cultivation method. However, when you've reached the Foundation Establishment realm, or more accurately, when you're in the process of breaking through to the Foundation Establishment realm, you'll have the opportunity to change your mental cultivation method without any side effects, Xianijia explained. The crowd finally understood. Then, someone raised his hand and asked, "What if we fail to break through to the Foundation Establishment realm?" Of course you'll be eliminated. However, even so you won't suffer any loss. At least you've obtained a beginner's mental cultivation method of your respective sections. Although it's impossible to break through to the Foundation Establishment realm with just these beginner's mental cultivation methods alone, it's definitely more advanced than your original mental cultivation method. That's a great reward in itself, Xianijia said with a faint smile. The crowd instantly let out a sigh of relief. Each of them felt like they were hit by a pie that fell from the sky. It was a pleasant surprise to receive a mental cultivation method that could help them break through to the Foundation Establishment realm for no reason. When will the Archaic Passage close? Another person raised his hand and asked. Chapter 5096. Hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but feel a little emotional. This situation was so similar to the time when they first arrived at the Heavenly Stage Island. However, they joined the Welcome Pavilion and were required to break through to the Foundation Establishment realm within a year. He did not expect the Archaic Alliance to do the same. It would be strange if these two places did not have a deep relationship. After listening to Xianijia's words, the crowd of cultivators in the secular world had different expressions. Some were eager to give it a try while some were frowning. No matter how they looked at it, breaking through to the foundation building realm in 10.5 months was not an easy task. But no matter what, Xianijia was right. This was a rare opportunity. Alright, next this old man will bring everyone to a good place. Everyone, please follow the leading senior brothers of your respective sections. When we arrive at the destination, they will teach you the basic mental cultivation method. If you have any doubts or questions, you can ask them. Let's go. Xianijia nodded at Lin Yi and brought everyone to the back hall. It was where the Archaic Passage's teleportation formation was located. Is the place you're talking about in the primordial underworld? Lin Yi asked curiously. Grand Uncle Master, you misunderstood. Although this teleportation formation is part of the Archaic Passage, the other end is not connected to the archaic underworld. It is connected to a very special transfer point, Xianijia replied. Oh. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows slightly. This was unexpected. Alright, the leading senior brothers of your respective sects will be responsible for the teleportation. As for the spiritual jades required for the teleportation, it will naturally be the responsibility of each sect. Let's begin, Xianijia said to everyone. In principle, there was no limit to the number of disciples that could be sent to the immemorial sect. However, it did not mean that the more, the better. That was because the more people sent, the more spiritual jades needed to be used. For a sect like the Snow Sword School that chose 4 prospective disciples at once, including Shui Jianfeng who was the senior brother leading the team, they would need to use up 10 spiritual jades for each teleportation. This was not a small amount. Therefore, as long as they were not so rich that they had nowhere to spend their spiritual jades, Lin Yi basically had a very high standard for the selection of disciples. Not only did they need to have suitable aptitude but they also needed to have sufficient strength. Otherwise, it would be useless if they could not break through to the Foundation establishment realm within 10.5 months. It was very rare that 33 cultivators from the secular world could stay in the first round. While waiting in line, Lin Yi chatted with the cultivators from the secular world. After all, many of them were disciples from sects that he was familiar with, such as the Ice Palace, Snow Valley, Dark Palace, etc. Even though they were not close, it was still necessary for Lin Yi to give them some advice. Of course, not all sects in the secular world were on good terms with Lin Yi. For example, the disciples of the Five Elements sect had a very complicated impression of Lin Yi. Although they were once enemies, they had no choice but to lower their heads to Lin Yi. Otherwise, Lin Yi alone could wipe out their entire sect. Not to mention that Lin Yi was now the leader of all sects in the secular world. Making an enemy of Lin Yi was equivalent to making an enemy of all sects in the secular world, and even the Immemorial Alliance. Don't forget that he was Xianijia's martial uncle. That kind of situation made people shudder with fear. Seeing that Lin Yi was chatting happily with the disciples of the Ice Palace and Snow Valley, the others couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. They wanted to hug Lin Yi's thigh, but what if Lin Yi ignored them? However, when some people braced themselves and came closer, they found that Lin Yi didn't reject them at all. He taught some cultivation skills and experience to the disciples of the Ice Palace and Snow Valley. He didn't deliberately avoid other cultivators in the secular world. Whether they were from sects or families that he was once enemies with, he treated them equally. Even if these people raised doubts, he would patiently answer them. To put it bluntly, this was a matter of level. If it was before he went to the Heaven Stage Island, Lin Yi might have a little prejudice. But now, in Lin Yi's eyes, the sects in the secular world, including the Five Elements sect, were no different from other sections. As a mysterious Ascension Realm Master, if he still cared about this little grudge, then he would be too calculative. As a result, almost all the 33 people who passed the first round of selection gathered around Lin Yi. This kind of opportunity to listen to the cultivation experience of a master at such a close distance was very rare, especially when the other party was an abnormal monster like Lin Yi. A casual word of advice from him might be worth 10 years of hard work for these people. Everyone listened with great interest. Lin Yi didn't hide anything from them. As long as it didn't involve his secret trump card, he basically answered all the questions. With his mysterious Ascension realm, he answered questions from the Foundation establishment realm. It was definitely a strategically advantageous situation. Many times even Xianijia, who was next to him, was amazed. Although he was an early Gold Core realm master, his knowledge and vision were much worse than Lin Yi's. Although these things that Lin Yi said were mainly aimed at the Foundation establishment realm, even he could benefit a lot from it. No wonder he's the Grandmaster who has existed since ancient times. Even if his strength is only at the great completion of Foundation establishment realm because of his primordial spirit, his knowledge and foundation may not even be comparable to that of the Supreme Elder. Xianijia sighed in his heart. He was already very sure about Lin Yi's identity, and now he was even more certain. Many things could be faked and deceived, but the Foundation could never be deceived. Xianijia secretly sighed. However, the senior brothers who led the other primordial sects couldn't stand it anymore. Although it was only the first round of selection, and these cultivators from the secular world were only considered as prospective disciples, and it was still unknown whether they could stay in the future, they were still people from their sections. Even if they wanted to ask for advice, they should ask them. Why did they all go to Lin Yi? Since President Lin is so helpful, why don't you just teach us the entry-level mental cultivation method of our sects as well? Seeing this, Shui Jianfeng felt awkward. He had not calmed down yet. Even if he couldn't make Lin Yi suffer any substantial loss, it would be good to taunt him to vent his anger, not to mention that he could also sow discord. As soon as he said this, the senior brothers who led the other sects frowned and said with dissatisfaction, "Martial Uncle Xen, this Lin Yi is from your Green Cloud sect in the North Island. Isn't it against the rules to draw our prospective disciples so blatantly?" Chapter 5097. Crooked Theory? Xianijia was savoring the cultivation insights that Lin Yi had just shared. When he heard Lin Yi's words, he was immediately amused. "You guys actually think that what Martial Granduncle said is crooked theory? Isn't it? All the sects in the Archaic Alliance have pretty much the same explanation on the cultivation of the Foundation establishment realm. This is the ironclad truth that has been continuously proven for thousands of years. Martial Uncle Xen, why don't you tell us which one of the things he just said is in line with it?" Shui Jianfeng sneered. The senior brothers of the other sects also nodded. Based on their understanding of the Foundation establishment realm, what Lin Yi had just said was deviant and completely different from the mainstream theory of the Archaic Alliance. It couldn't be that Lin Yi was the only one who was right, and the entire Archaic Alliance was wrong, right? What did the Archaic Alliance say? Lin Yi was a little curious. Apart from some of his personal cultivation insights, most of what he had just said was actually the mainstream understanding of the Heaven Stage Island, not just his own opinion. The other cultivators in the secular world looked at each other. Those who were a little more pessimistic immediately wanted to retreat and looked at Lin Yi with a little more suspicion. It turned out that it was all crooked theory. I thought it was some priceless advice. Martial Granduncle, what you just said is indeed different from the mainstream understanding of the Archaic Alliance, Xianijia said truthfully. So it's really misleading. I was wondering why he would be so kind to share cultivation insights with us. Several disciples of the Five Elements sect immediately distanced themselves from Lin Yi, looking as if they were almost fooled by him. However, what Martial Granduncle said just now is not crooked theory. It's an original opinion that hits the nail on the head. In many aspects, it's much more brilliant than the mainstream understanding of our Archaic Alliance. It can be said to be enlightening. Even the disciples benefited a lot after listening to it. It's just that some people don't know what's good for them. Xianijia changed the topic. Oh, I see. Lin Yi immediately understood that the level of the Heaven Stage Island was much higher than that of the ancient small Jianghu. The gap between the two was not only the strength of the top masters, but also the theoretical foundation. Just like the theoretical foundation of modern science and the theoretical foundation of modern science, there was a natural generational gap between the two. People with a higher level like Xianijia could still understand the abstruseness of it, but in the ears of Shui Jianfeng, a master in the foundation establishment stage, it was like a deviant heresy. What? You don't know what's good? Shui Jianfeng choked for a moment, then burst into wild laughter as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He laughed so hard that he was rocking back and forth and hammering the ground. Gasping for breath, he pointed at Lin Yi and said, "Martial Uncle Xen, are you going to say that what he said is right and what our Archaic Alliance has refined for thousands of years is wrong? Even if he's from your Green Cloud sect in the North Island, even if you want to protect him, please use your brain a little bit. Do you really think we're so easy to fool?" That's right. In front of so many prospective disciples, Martial Uncle Xen, you have to take responsibility for your words. I'm afraid Martial Uncle Xen can't bear the consequences of misleading the disciples, right? The senior brothers from the other sects echoed. You're really playing the lute to a cow. Xianijia was speechless. These people's realm was not high enough and their thinking was rigid. They only thought that what they had learned before was the golden rule and did not understand the wisdom of Lin Yi's advice at all. Even if he argued with them at this time, it would be useless. They would only think that he was unprincipled and protective. Lin Yi did not care. He shared these cultivation experiences purely out of kindness. It was their business whether they listened or not. As for what the leading senior brothers from the archaic sects thought, it was even less of a concern. I think you're just at your wits' end, aren't you? Shui Jianfeng smiled proudly. After being provoked by him, the leading senior brothers from other archaic sects looked at Lin Yi with obvious hostility. Anyone who met such a guy who deliberately tried to mislead their prospective disciples would feel disgusted as if they had eaten a fly. Unfortunately, Xianijia was here after all. Although they were dissatisfied, they dared not do anything to Lin Yi. Otherwise, if he provoked them a little more, they might directly take action. What are you still standing there for? Continue to listen to his crooked brainwashing? Hurry up and come over here. The leading senior brothers from various archaic sects frowned and scolded their prospective disciples. Not only the people from the Five Elements sect, but the other practitioners from the secular world were also wavering after hearing the words just now. At this moment, facing the scolding of their respective archaic sects, they naturally had no resistance. They walked away without hesitation. When they looked at Lin Yi again, there was no longer any gratitude and admiration in their eyes. Instead, there was some disdain and hostility in their eyes. At this moment, only Leng Leng, Ling Shan, and 3 other practitioners from the secular world remained by Lin Yi's side. They were all prospective disciples of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. Although they were hesitant after hearing the words just now, since Xianijia said that it was a unique insight that hit the nail on the head, they basically believed it. Of course, even if they didn't believe it, they couldn't stay away from Lin Yi. After all, Xianijia was right beside them. Are you all blind? Have you all forgotten about the contributions that Lin Yi has made for the secular world? Do you think he'll harm you? Ling Shan gritted her teeth in anger. She didn't mind if she was wronged, but she couldn't bear to see Lin Yi being wronged. Leng Leng also felt wronged for Lin Yi, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she looked at the leading senior brothers as if she was looking at an idiot. What Lin Yi said just now wasn't that profound. As long as she thought about it carefully, even a mid-stage foundation establishment practitioner like her could understand some of the profoundness in it. Many of the things he said didn't conflict with the mainstream knowledge of the Archaic Alliance. It was just that it hit the nail on the head. Do these people have pig brains? We don't see any contributions he has made for the secular world. He's just using this opportunity to show off his power. We're not idiots. A 5 Elements sect disciple retorted with a cold smile. He was now a prospective disciple of the Snow Sword sect. What he said was actually surrendering to Shui Jianfeng. As long as he could successfully join the Snow Sword sect in the future, what could Lin Yi do to him? Although the new head of the 5 Elements sect had been changed to the Xuanzhen ancestor, the remaining disciples were mostly Shenzhen ancestors people, especially those who were strong. It was already good enough for the new disciples of the Xuanzhen ancestor to be able to become mystic class practitioners. So naturally they didn't like Lin Yi from the beginning. Now that there was a chance to mock him, they naturally wouldn't let it go. Chapter 5098. Yan Zhongding, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Your 5 Elements sect has been in trouble before, and it's all thanks to Lin Yi and the Archaic Alliance that we're all safe and sound. Isn't that a contribution? Even if it's a dog, it should at least wag its tail after receiving a favor from someone, right? Lingshan raged. Who are you calling a dog? You dare insult a prospective disciple of the Snow Sword sect in front of me? Can I take that as a provocation? Shui Jianfeng said unkindly. I didn't say a dog. Listen up, I'm saying that some people are worse than dogs. Lingshan raised her neck. Shui Jianfeng might have some authority in front of the other practitioners, but to people like her and Qintian, he wasn't threatening at all. Yo, you're getting better at insulting people, aren't you? But out of respect for life, we can't insult dogs like that. They're humans' best friends after all. Lin Yi teased. As for Shui Jianfeng and Yan Zhongding, he didn't care about them at all. You. Shui Jianfeng gritted his teeth in anger, but when he saw Lin Yi looking at him, he immediately felt afraid. It was fine to sow discord, but if he went too far and made Lin Yi angry, he'd be in trouble again. He could only snort coldly and say, what's right and wrong is right and wrong, I don't care to argue with you. That's right, it's all thanks to senior brother Shui's words. Otherwise, all of us would have been kept in the dark by a certain person's crooked ways. If we were to really follow his words, wouldn't we end up suffering from chi deviation? Whoever follows this kind of person will only be unlucky. The rest of the practitioners from the common world also had a look of fear on their faces. Training was no small matter, and any wrong step could lead to serious consequences. Even if it was just a small detail, if they really accepted all of Lin Yi's insights, not to mention their future, they'd be thankful if they didn't go berserk halfway through their training. On one side was Lin Yi's personal heresy, and on the other side was the mainstream knowledge of the Archaic Alliance. It was clear which side to choose. Lingshan was about to retort when Lin Yi stopped her, saying faintly, my followers are indeed unlucky, having to eat all sorts of random pills all the time. Like those foundation building pills that allow you to level up after that. I was planning on giving them to you guys to try, one for each of you, but now I can only give them to those 3 unlucky bastards. After that, Lin Yi suddenly had 3 elixirs in his hand, and he handed them to the 3 prospective disciples of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island one by one. Foundation building pill? Supreme quality? Shui Jianfeng's eyelids twitched when he saw this. This was a pill that was very difficult to buy in the Archaic Alliance, and top-grade pills were even rarer. Although it was useless to a Foundation establishment great circle expert like him, it didn't change the fact that this was a treasure that couldn't be bought even if one wanted to. It wasn't just Shui Jianfeng, the other disciples of the archaic sects were all shocked, looking at Lin Yi as if he was a monster. Just who was this guy giving away 3 supreme quality foundation building pills just like that? You 3 hurry up and thank the Grand Master. Don't you know that as long as you take the pill, you'll definitely be able to break through to foundation building? Even Xianijia couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Even the Grand Elder didn't seem to have such generosity, right? Thank you, Grand Master. The 3 prospective disciples came to their senses and quickly thanked him. Just now they didn't believe in Lin Yi, but in the blink of an eye, they were hit by a pie in the sky. Happiness came too suddenly. The expressions of Yan Zhongding and the others were very interesting. According to what Lin Yi said, if they had stayed with Lin Yi just now, they would also be able to get a supreme quality foundation building pill. But now they had given up this opportunity. For a moment, everyone's resentful eyes fell on Shui Jianfeng. It was all because of this meddlesome guy. Even if Lin Yi's cultivation experience was crooked, it didn't really affect them, because the senior disciples of each sect would definitely retell them the mainstream knowledge of the Archaic Alliance. At that time they just had to listen to the senior disciples. If they had stayed with Lin Yi for a little longer, they would have been able to get a supreme quality foundation building pill. According to Xianijia, this was equivalent to a guaranteed entry to foundation building. Such a great opportunity was ruined because of Shui Jianfeng's words. The supreme grade foundation building pill that was in their hands flew away. If everyone didn't feel resentful, then there would be a problem. Right now, even their intestines were green with regret. Not only these prospective disciples but in fact the senior disciples of each sect were also very resentful. Supreme quality foundation building pill meant ready-made new disciples in the foundation building stage, which meant that their mission was completed directly. When they returned, they would receive all kinds of rewards from the sect. Now it was all for naught. Being stared at like this by everyone, Shui Jianfeng's expression immediately changed. If there was a hole in the ground, he would have already crawled into it. He tried so hard to sow discord, but in the end, Lin Yi casually gave away 3 supreme quality foundation building pills. Instead, he became the target of public criticism. How could he live like this? Fortunately, the teleportation circle had already been activated. Shui Jianfeng quickly called Yan Zhongding and the others and teleported away. As for the others, they could only look at the 3 supreme quality foundation building pills enviously while waiting in line to be teleported away. They were drooling and cursing Shui Jianfeng at the same time. It was all his fault for doing something unnecessary. Lin Yi and the others stayed with Xianijia until the end. Other than the 3 prospective disciples chosen by the Green Cloud sect in the north, Xianijia purposely left 2 more spots for Lin Yi and Lingshan. As for the others, they could only stay in Shenangjia for the time being. After all, the spiritual jades were limited. Lung Lung was a little reluctant. She was neither a senior disciple nor a prospective disciple. Theoretically, she should stay outside. She had only reunited with Lin Yi for a few days, and they had to be separated again. It was inevitable that she would feel a little jealous. At this moment, Lin Yi suddenly waved his hand and called her over. He smiled at Xianijia, who had a troubled look on his face, and said, "It's all right. I'll pay for the spiritual jades of the Green Cloud sect in the north. Since you're a Grand Master, you should act like one." After saying that, Lin Yi handed over a bag of spiritual jades. Xianijia took it and was instantly stunned. There were 20 to 30 pieces of spiritual jades in the bag. This Grand Master had been empty-handed all this time. How did he make them? Chapter 5099. Forgive me for asking, but where did you get so many spiritual jades? Is there a spiritual jade mine in the secular world? Xianijia could not help but ask in shock. Spirit jades aren't something that only exists in the ancient Jianghu. Lin Yi smiled mysteriously without denying. Xianijia could not help but gasp. Lin Yi was referring to the Heaven Stage Island, but to him, it sounded like there was a spiritual jade mine in the secular world. It was an unprecedented miracle that there was a spiritual jade mine in the secular world where the spiritual qi was so thin. After being stunned for a while, Xianijia finally recovered and said gratefully, "Since you're so generous, it would be impolite for me to refuse. Don't worry, I have plenty of them." Lin Yi smiled casually, which shocked Xianijia again. He looked at Lin Yi with even more respect. To a certain extent, wealth was also a reflection of one's strength. He had just given away 3 supreme-grade foundation establishment pills and now he gave away a pile of spiritual jades. He did not expect this Grand Master to be a god of wealth. Exanegia suppressed his shock and waited for Lin Yi and the rest to stand in the teleportation portal. Exanegia immediately activated the portal, and the scenery in front of him changed drastically. This is? Lin Yi thought the transit station was still deep in Shenangjia, but it was a small island instead. Apart from a few similar islands nearby, the rest of the area was covered by the sea without any landmarks. It was impossible to tell where this place was. However, one thing was for sure, this place was definitely not the secular world because the spiritual chi here was rather dense. It was not something that could be found in the secular world. This is the Archaic Sea region, which is also the transit station between the secular world and the archaic underworld. Grandmaster, please take a look. The portal opposite is the archaic passage that connects to the archaic underworld, Xianijie introduced. Lin Yi looked over and found a similar portal not far away. He could not help but ask, "Are you going to let them break through to the Foundation establishment realm here?" That's right. The density of spiritual chi here is similar to the archaic underworld. It's enough for them to break through to the Foundation establishment stage, Xianijie nodded. Not necessarily. If there was no time limit, it wouldn't be a problem for them to cultivate here for a few decades. But now they only have 10.5 months. How can it be easy to break through to the Foundation establishment stage with just this bit of heaven and earth spiritual chi? Lin Yi shook his head without end. As far as he was concerned, unless he gave these cultivators from the mortal world medicinal pills like the Foundation building pill, otherwise the chances of success in the end were next to nothing. Just relying on this bit of heaven and earth spiritual chi is indeed not enough. However, there are dozens of spiritual eyes on these islands, and the density of spiritual chi is at least dozens of times higher than normal. Let them cultivate beside the spiritual well for 10.5 months. If they still can't reach the Foundation establishment realm, then it means they're not fated with the Archaic Alliance, Xianijie said with a smile. Spiritual eye? Lin Yi was stunned. That's right. Martial Granduncle, please follow me. Xianijie immediately led the way. There were a few small wooden boats docked at the side of the island. While they couldn't withstand much wind and waves, the islands were only a few miles apart. It was more than enough for them to travel between the islands. The senior brothers and prospective disciples from the archaic sects that came earlier were nowhere to be seen. Evidently, they had gone to look for their own spiritual eyes. Under Xianijie's lead, Lin Yi and the others quickly found a spiritual eye on one of the nearby islands. It was on the beach. At first glance, it looked like an inconspicuous sand dune, but once they walked to the side, they could instantly feel the extremely dense heaven and earth spiritual chi. Even Lin Yi couldn't help but be amazed. The conditions here were even comparable to those training caves on Sky-class Island. Really? The chi here is so dense, it's so refreshing. It's so comfortable. Lingshan had never experienced such dense chi before. If it weren't for Xianijie and the others, she would have soaked herself in the sand right there and then. That feeling was definitely comfortable from head to toe. Even Lung Lung who came with them had a face full of enjoyment. There weren't many spiritual eyes even in the small Jianghu of the archaic sects. Disciples like them who came out to train in the common world usually wouldn't stay here and occupy the spiritual eyes unless there were special circumstances. Otherwise, most of them wouldn't want to waste their time in the common world. They would probably stay here for the whole year to train. Then those prospective disciples from the common world wouldn't be able to do anything. This island is reserved for the Green Cloud sect of the North Island. I've seen it. There's a spring on the other side. Martial Granduncle, you can bring them there to have a look, Xianijie said considerately. Lin Yi nodded. He immediately brought Lingshan and Lung Lung to the other side. It was exactly the same as the previous one. This place is really nice. Island, beach and a spiritual eye with such dense chi. It feels like I'm on vacation. Lingshan buried herself in the sand and stretched her body without caring about her image. On the other side, Lung Lung started meditating. It seemed like she was using this rare opportunity to train properly. Her attitude was much more proper than Lingshan's. Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. He couldn't blame Lingshan for being so lazy. After all, she wasn't like Lung Lung. Every bit of Lung Lung's strength came from her own hard work. It could be said that meditating had already become a habit of hers. Lingshan's Sky-class full-cycle strength was purely given to her by Lin Yi. Sitting in the position of the Vice Director of the Supernatural Investigation Department and working hard was the life she was most used to. Since we're done with the Archaic Alliance, why don't you just take a break? It's rare for us to have a vacation together, Lin Yi suggested with a smile. Okay. Lingshan agreed immediately. She then asked, what about the others? You're such a silly girl. You're so honest. Lin Yi shook his head speechlessly. This silly girl clearly wanted to spend some alone time with him. Even though there was an extra Lung Leng now, it was still much better than having a bunch of people squeezed together. He didn't expect her to think of everyone at the first moment. He really didn't know if she was naive or simple-minded. Is it wrong? Lingshan was confused. After a while, she suddenly slapped her head and said, "Oh yeah, if Wu Qintian and the others come too, then there'll be no one to take care of Mengyao and the others." Chapter 5100. Yes, hurry up, Lingshan urged. Lin Yi nodded and immediately ran to inform Xianijia. Xianijia agreed on the spot. As the leader of the team, he had this privilege. Moreover, this island belonged to the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, so it wouldn't affect other primeval sections. Moreover, Lin Yi could provide the spiritual jades needed for the teleportation. To him, this was just a simple favor, so he didn't have to make it difficult for him. Lin Yi teleported out immediately and called Qintian and the others, telling them to come over. He would pick them up when they arrived at Shenangjia. Soon, a large group of people gathered on the island. As expected of the Grand Master, to be able to find so many Sky-class full-perfection masters in the common world. I'm impressed. Xianijia was stunned when he saw Qintian and the others. He was glad that Lin Yi was the god of wealth. Otherwise, he would go bankrupt if he had to use spiritual jades to teleport all these people. Lin Yi smiled. If he were to tell him that he was the one who raised everyone's strength, this cheap disciple's eyes would pop out. After the shock, Xianijia was overjoyed. Although Lin Yi didn't explicitly say that these people were going to join the Green Cloud sect of the North Island, any one of them who succeeded in building their foundation and joined the Archaic Alliance would undoubtedly be part of the Green Cloud sect of the North Island. After all, they had a relationship with Lin Yi. Xianijia even guessed that they practiced the Green Cloud heart calming spell. With all these factors, could they join other ancient sects? The most important part of the experience in the secular world was to recruit disciples. He was about to get a bunch of talented geniuses. For Xianijia, this was a great merit. In the future, his status and treatment in the Green Cloud sect in the North Island would be improved. Lin Yi, the Grand Master who appeared out of nowhere, was his lucky star. Facing the arrival of Qintian's group, the one who was the most nervous was cold. For some reason, she felt like an ugly daughter-in-law meeting her parents-in-law. After all, to Lin Yi's small circle, she was a complete outsider. But after Qintian and the others called her sis-in-law, Lung Lung's face flushed red. But deep down she was relieved. Since she'd decided to be with Lin Yi, she had to integrate well into this little circle. Otherwise, she'd still be an outsider. Boss, this place is good, but we don't have a house. We can't block the wind and rain. It'll be bad if the weather changes. Qintian rubbed his chin. Yeah, so many of us are here. We've got nothing better to do anyway, why don't we build a seaview house for fun? Xiaobo suggested. Yu Bing and the others all agreed as well. They were a bunch of Sky-class peak masters after all. It would be hard for them to build a proper house, but if it was just a small wooden hut, it would be a piece of cake. Alright, I'll leave it to you guys. Lin Yi nodded. It would be fine if they were alone, but Mengyao and the others were here. They couldn't just let them be exposed to the sun and wind. As long as they built the house next to the eye, they would be able to absorb enough qi. Qintian and the others responded, and they immediately started working. One group went to get the materials, while the other stayed behind to build the foundation. As for Lingshan and the other women, they formed a circle around the blueprints, and even Cold was dragged into the discussion. It was a lively scene. Xianijia was dumbfounded by the scene. These people were not here to cultivate, they were here to have fun. You're actually building a house? Are you planning to stay here for a long time? Xianijia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Can I? Lin Yi's eyes lit up. This place was full of qi and had a beautiful environment. It was isolated from the rest of the world. It was a blessed place. But once the ancient passage closes, it would be a great choice. In principle, there's nothing wrong with that. Although this place is blessed by the heavens, it doesn't belong to the Archaic Alliance, nor does it belong to the mortal world. In truth, it's an ownerless land. But once the ancient passage closes, we'll really be cut off from the rest of the world. Xianijia said. It was a boundless sea in all directions, and the only place where one could really move was limited to this small archipelago. The total area of the archipelago was only a few dozen square kilometers. The only good thing about it was that it was rich in spiritual qi. It could be used for occasional closed-door training and breakthroughs, but once the primordial passageway was closed and isolated from the rest of the world, living here would definitely drive one crazy. Then what are the conditions to open the ancient passage? Lin Yi asked. There are two conditions. First, you need a lot of spiritual jades. You need at least 300 pieces of spiritual jades to activate the primordial passage. Second, you need to pass through the natural inhibition between the primordial small Jianghu and the secular world. This inhibition has a strong and weak cycle. It will reach its lowest point every 1,000 years. Only then can you pass through safely. Although it's not completely impossible to pass through at other times, it's very dangerous, Xianijia answered honestly. Seal? I didn't feel any strong seal when I came in. Linny asked curiously. You may not know this, but this seal needs to be replenished with qi. The qi in the common world is so thin that even if there was a seal, it would have collapsed long ago. However, it still exists in the small ancient world. The transmission formation of the ancient passage is within the scope of the seal. No matter how you go in or out, you'll be affected, Xianijia said. That means as long as we don't go to the small ancient world, the transmission formation here won't be affected? Linny cheered up. This seems to be the case. But to activate the transmission formation here, we need a lot of spirit jades. Even if we don't need 300, we need at least 200. Moreover, it can only last for a period of time. After a year we'll have to change it. Xianijia shook his head. Not to mention him, 200 spirit jades was not a small number for the entire Green Cloud sect in the North Island. Moreover, it was not permanent. It could only last for a year. Oh, that's not a problem. Linny didn't care about the spirit jades at all. For him, any problem that could be solved with spirit jades was not a problem. Not to mention 200 spirit jades, if he could swipe the spirit jade card, 20,000 was just a drop in the ocean. Chapter 5101. But thinking about it carefully, since this Grand Master was an existence left behind from the primordial era, as long as he put in some effort, he would be able to accumulate a huge amount of wealth in such a long time. It wouldn't be strange even if it was the common world. If that's the case, this place is indeed worth managing. Linny looked at Qintian and the others who were busy working behind him, then looked at the surroundings and nodded in satisfaction. According to what Xianijia said, after the primordial passage was closed, this place would basically be completely isolated from the primordial world. As long as he continuously activated the teleportation circle with Spirit Jade, he would be able to come and go freely between the common world and the common world. It was the best choice for a base camp. Not only would it be safe to place the unconscious girls here, they would also be nourished by the spirit qi. It was killing two birds with one stone. After making up his mind, the next thing Lin Yi needed to do was to carefully explore the surroundings of the archipelago. Although there didn't seem to be any danger on the surface, since he planned to manage this place as a base camp, he had to clearly investigate every possible threat in the surroundings beforehand. At least, he had to have an idea of what was going on. After greeting Ling Shan and the others, Lin Yi started to row the boat around the archipelago. However, he wasn't alone. Lung Ling came along this time. How are you getting along with them? Lin Yi asked as he rowed the boat. Not bad. Lung Ling nodded. Her cold personality made it difficult for her to get along with others. Even if she took the initiative to integrate into Lin Yi's little circle, it wasn't that easy. After all, her background was from the primordial world, it was too different from the common world. It would be easier for her to get along with Hui Yudi and Huang Xiaotao on Sky-class Island. However, Lung Lung was just a cold personality, not the kind of disgusting pretentious aloofness. So Ling Shan and the others were still very warm to her, even to the point that she felt a little flattered. Moreover, they were all straightforward girls who didn't have any schemes or subtlety. Even if they weren't as close as sisters, their relationship wouldn't be that bad after interacting with each other for a long time. They're all simple guys. They're easy to get along with. Linny smiled. He could tell that Cold was a little reserved. In fact, as long as one did not have the temperament of being familiar with others, one would feel restrained in Lung Lung's position. However, one would slowly get used to it. Lung Lung hesitated for a moment before asking weakly, how many female confidants do you actually have? Oh, I really haven't counted them except for the ones in the secular world. There are still more on the Heaven Stage Island. Linny couldn't help sweating. Anyway, he couldn't count all of them with his fingers or even his toes. Even in the ancient world of cultivation, it was rare to see a winner in life who had as many female confidants as he did. Lung Lung was stunned for a moment. She had already seen more than 10 of them today. She didn't expect that this wasn't all of them. Lung Lung could not help but be dumbfounded. You're not bragging, are you? What's there to brag about? Linny blushed. There are always men who brag like this. The more female confidants they have, the more powerful they are. This is a very normal thing in the ancient martial world. Lung Lung paused for a moment as she spoke. She then muttered with a strange expression. But even if they were to brag, they wouldn't be as many as you. You're really unprecedented. Linny could not help sweating again. Although other men treated this as their capital to show off, he felt that he had lost a lot of experience. These were all love debts. Could he ever repay them in this lifetime? He initially thought that Lung Lung would be a little angry. Unexpectedly, the corner of the girl's mouth curled up and said, "But this is good too. At least it proves that I didn't find the wrong person. Otherwise, it's impossible for so many girls to be blind, right?" Linny was immediately defeated by her strong logic. It was true that the probability of so many girls being blind was extremely small, but was she not jealous at all? "You're not angry?" Linny asked cautiously. "Why would I be angry?" Lung Lung was surprised. It was natural for a strong man to be favored by a woman. It was a natural thing for a man like Lin Yi to have so many female confidants in the ancient martial world. Was there a need to be angry? Lin Yi was stumped by the question. He choked for a while and did not know what to say. He could only change the topic. "Oh right, are you going back to the ancient martial world after your training in the secular world?" "No, the ancient trial will be right after the training in the secular world. I'll only return to the ancient martial world after the trial ends." Lung Lung shook her head. "The ancient trial that you mentioned is not in the ancient martial world?" Lin Yi asked curiously. "It is and it isn't," Lung Lung said. "What do you mean? There's a hidden meaning to this?" Lin Yi was confused. "Actually, I'm not too sure. In short, the only way to get to that place is through the teleportation circle. Other than that, there's no other way to get there. No one has ever been able to find out the location of that place. The ancient martial world is only connected to that place by a one-way teleportation circle. It seems that we can only teleport to the ancient martial world from that place," Lung Lung explained. "One-way teleportation circle? If that's the case, there's no way to teleport to that place from the ancient martial world. Then how are you guys going to participate in the ancient trial?" Lin Yi was even more confused now. In the past, the ancient trial was in other places. But this time, we've encountered a good opportunity that only comes once in 1,000 years. We can teleport there directly from this transfer point. After the trial ends, we can teleport back to the ancient martial world from there. This should be the arrangement of the ancient alliance," Lung Lung said. "There's a teleportation circle here?" Lin Yi was stunned. There were only 2 teleportation circles in this transfer point. One was connected to the secular world, and the other was connected to the ancient martial world. He didn't see a third teleportation circle before this. Could it be on another island? It seems so. I'm not too sure about the specifics. But there's one thing I'm sure of. There's no third teleportation circle on these islands. Lung Lung shook her head. "That's strange," Lin Yi frowned. "We don't have to worry about this. Anyway, Uncle Master XN will definitely tell us when the time comes." Lung Lung was indifferent, but her eyes were filled with a rare excitement that she couldn't suppress. According to the Archaic Alliance, the Archaic Trials this time could be said to be a once-in-1,000 years opportunity. Any cultivator who had the slightest desire to improve would definitely be slightly excited when they encountered such an opportunity. Naturally, she was the same. Chapter 5102. The two talked as they circled around the archipelago. Lin Yi didn't sense any actual threat from the beginning to the end. From what he understood, the biggest threat in the vast ocean was the sea beasts. If this place had sea beasts like Sky-class Island, then he'd have to think twice about it. What surprised him, however, was that there weren't any traces of powerful sea beasts. There were all sorts of strange creatures in the sea, many of them carnivorous, but they weren't much of a threat to a practitioner. After a round of inspection, Lin Yi's decision was confirmed. This place was indeed suitable for a base. Lin Yi went back and called Ling Shan and the others together. He told them about his plans and they were all very excited. This wasn't just a base, it was also a vacation spot. "Boss, if that's the case, then we can't just build a house casually. We need to design it properly. I know a few designer friends, I'll go ask them for the designs," Tian said impatiently. "Yeah, a sea view cabin won't suffice. Let's make a few sea view villas for everyone to live in," Ling Shan and the others nodded. "Alright, I'm going out anyway, I'll go with you." Lin Yi nodded and teleported back to the common world with Tian. "Boss, what are you going to do?" Tian couldn't help but ask. "I'm going to West Star Village to see the old man." Lin Yi smiled. He talked to Lin Dongfang on the phone before, but it was rare for him to come back to the common world. It wouldn't make sense if he didn't see him face to face. Plus, since they were going to build a base here, he had to ask the old man and Aunt Qing to come and take a look. "Oh, so you're going to see Senior Lin," Tian said respectfully. He'd only seen Lin Dongfang once when he Luonan and the Iron Cloak sect came to cause trouble, but that had left a deep impression on him. As a sky-class full perfection, he still couldn't understand Lin Dongfang's strength. He only felt that he was mysterious as Lin Yi. Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh when he saw his expression. What was called distance-making beauty? This was a living example of distance-making beauty. If this fellow had spent more time with old man Lin, he would have known what kind of person he was. He definitely wouldn't have been filled with respect just by hearing his name. "Oh, right, do you know what Air Gooden has been doing lately?" Lin Yi asked casually. "Air Gooden?" Tian paused for a moment before realizing that the guy was talking about Zhou Jiaming. He scratched his head. "It's been a while since we last talked. I think he said he was going out to do something. Then I couldn't find him. He doesn't use a cell phone, so it's not easy to find him." "He's not in the West Star Village?" Lin Yi paused. He thought that Air Gooden was still in Star West Village, since he needed to drink the spring water to suppress the poison. Even if he left Star West Village, it wouldn't be long. But he wasn't in Star West Village? "I don't know," Tian shook his head. Although Air Gooden was his boss, he didn't interact much with him. Other than calling him occasionally, they basically didn't talk at all. He didn't know what Air Gooden was doing. "Nothing bad happened, right?" Lin Yi frowned. But thinking about it, old man Lin was in Star West Village, and Air Gooden himself wasn't someone to be messed with. The possibility of something bad happening was very small. No matter what, he just needed to go to Star West Village and he'd know everything. After leaving Shenangjia, Lin Yi and Tian parted ways and went straight to Star West Village. He came to the village entrance and looked at the familiar village. He couldn't help but feel emotional. 3 years had passed in a flash and he had changed a lot. The whole world of practitioners had changed a lot, but Star West Village didn't seem to have changed at all. It was still peaceful. "Huh, aren't you that guy?" Suddenly, a voice with a village accent came from the side. Lin Yi heard the voice and turned his head. It was Widow Wang from the grocery store at the entrance of the village. She was eating sunflower seeds at the window as she looked at him up and down. She thought for a long time before remembering the name. "Old Lin's Lil Yi, right? Didn't you go to the big city to work? You haven't been back for years, right?" "Andy Wang, long time no see. How's the village these years?" Lin Yi smiled and greeted. "How can a small village like ours be? 100 years can't change much, but Lil Yi, you've changed a lot. TSK, look at your clothes, they're all famous brands, right? You're different after living in the big city, not like the country bumpkins in our village." Widow Wang praised as she ate her sunflower seeds. "Not at all, they're all cheap stuff," Lin Yi smiled. "Hey, don't think that Andy Wang hasn't seen the world. I can tell if it's a famous brand or not," Widow Wang said confidently and then asked, "You're back to see your grandfather, right?" "Don't worry, he's fine. The village is a little chaotic these days, but your family doesn't raise chickens or ducks, so you can't afford any losses." "What happened in the village?" Lin Yi was stunned. "Huh, you still don't know?" Widow Wang was a little confused. She thought that Lin Yi heard that something happened in the village and rushed back to see old Lin. She didn't expect that Lin Yi didn't know anything. "I don't know," Lin Yi shook his head blankly. Come. I don't have anything to do anyway, so Auntie Wang will tell you about it." Widow Wang suddenly became energetic. Usually, other than watching TV, she would point and talk to people to relieve her boredom. However, it was always the same old faces and it was boring. It was rare that she had a new audience today, so she said mysteriously, "You don't know, but it's not just our West Star Mountain village. Even the nearby West Star Mountain isn't peaceful." Lin Yi originally wanted to look for old Lin directly, but since Widow Wang stopped him, he could listen to what was going on. He walked over and said, "Why is the village not peaceful?" "It's haunted," Widow Wang said with a shocking tone. Haunted?" Lin Yi was shocked. The West Star Mountain village had always been peaceful, and he didn't even see a new face all year round. How could it suddenly be haunted? Actually, we can't be sure that it's haunted. Maybe it's a monster." Widow Wang thought about it and changed her words. Chapter 5103. "Lily, don't doubt me. It's the truth. It doesn't sound reliable, but it's the truth. It's definitely not Auntie Wang's nonsense. If you don't believe me, you can ask someone else later." Widow Wang purposely lowered her voice and said in a horrified tone, "This is really evil. Since about a month ago, chickens and ducks in our village have been disappearing for no reason. Basically, every household that has a pet has been affected. This is probably a case of a thief, right? What does this have to do with ghosts and monsters?" Lin Yi shook his head disapprovingly. "That's what everyone thought at first. Although everyone in our village knows each other well, there's no guarantee that we might have recruited some outsiders. But guess what happened? A few days later, someone found a pile of dead chickens and ducks in the mountains. When everyone went over to take a look, they found out that it was the chickens and ducks that had been lost in our village. Widow Wang said in shock. This is a little strange. Lin Yi frowned slightly. Normally, if it was just a case of a thief, these chickens and ducks would have been stolen and sold. But the dead chickens and ducks were thrown into the mountains. This didn't make sense. Could it be that someone was trying to take revenge, or was it just a prank? This isn't the scariest thing. The scariest thing is that all the dead chickens and ducks were there, but the blood inside was sucked dry. Widow Wang patted her chest in fear. Really? The blood was sucked dry? Lin Yi was shocked. How can it be fake? Many people in the village went there that day. Everyone saw it for themselves. It was a horrifying scene. No one dared to go there. Widow Wang said nervously. If you didn't go there, how do you know that the blood was sucked dry? Lin Yi couldn't help but ask. Gooden said it, he's the one who found out about it. He's big and brave, and he dares to go up and look at everything, Widow Wang said with a curl of her lips. I see. Lin Yi smiled. Normal people would be scared of something like this, but Gooden wasn't scared of anything. It was just some chickens and ducks. Even if it was really a ghost, it would probably be smashed silly by his fist. With his strength, he basically had no opponents in the secular world. Even Foundation establishment experts from the Archaic Alliance might not be able to take advantage of him. This is just the beginning. At first, it was just losing chickens and ducks, but recently, even the cows and sheep have disappeared. It was just a few days ago, and then Gooden's cows suddenly disappeared. Needless to say, it must have been taken away by that evil thing. Widow Wang said confidently. It's not good to jump to conclusions so quickly. Maybe someone is playing a prank or something. Lin Yi shook his head disapprovingly. Although these things sounded a little strange, it was too far-fetched to conclude that they were haunted just like that. A prank? How could this be a prank? If chickens, ducks, cows, and goats are pranks, then is killing people also a prank? Widow Wang scoffed. What? He even killed someone? Who is it? Lin Yi was shocked. If it was just livestock, it would be fine, but if someone died, it would be a big deal. Especially for normal people, it was a big deal. It's not from our village. I think it's from some hiking club. Anyway, it's just a few university students who came to our West Star Mountain to camp, and 2 of them died in one night. 2 days ago, the police came to ask about this, saying that the 2 people who died were also sucked dry of blood. They died in the same way as the chickens and ducks in our village. It's spreading like crazy. Widow Wang said as she shrunk her neck. It's this big? Lin Yi couldn't help but frown. He just thought that Auntie Wang and the others were superstitious and paranoid, but after hearing this, even he felt that something was wrong. Could it be that there really was something that sucked blood? Isn't that right? Now everyone is panicking and no one dares to go out if there's nothing important. Look, even my business is a lot worse. Widow Wang grumbled for a while and then exhorted, you should also hurry back. Although we only lost some livestock in our village, who knows if there will be any deaths. It's better to be careful. Okay, thanks Auntie Wang. I'll go back first. Lin Yi nodded and immediately walked back to his house. He heard Old Man Lin and Aunt Qing talking before he even entered the door. His lips curled up and he stopped in his tracks. Are you really not going to help Little E? Since the Archaic Alliance is full of Heavenly Dao stage masters, even if Little E went to Heaven Island, they won't be easy to deal with. Aren't you worried at all? Aunt Qing said with a bit of worry and complaint. Don't worry about it. That kid's life is very tough. He won't die. Old Lin said in a nonchalant tone. What do you mean tough? Even if he's tough, you can't push him into the fire pit. What if something bad happens? Aunt Qing said unhappily. What do you know? I've raised this kid since he was young, and he even went to Heaven Stage Island to stay for 3 years. If he can't even handle this kind of situation, then wouldn't he be trash? How could the kid I personally raised be this kind of trash? Old Man Lin was still unconvinced. You call that training? You're clearly letting him grow, okay? Little E has a good foundation. With your training method, if it was someone else, they would have had to send their son off. How dare you show off? Aunt Qing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Old Lin choked for a while and then said, anyway, don't worry about this. That kid isn't stupid. If he really can't handle it, he would have called for help. I don't think so. Xiao Yi usually looks amiable and easy to talk to, but in fact he's as stubborn as you. He probably won't even consider asking you for help, and it'll be too late by the time he reaches that step. I think we'd better pack up quickly and go down the mountain. Aunt Qing continued to persuade them with good intentions. I already said we really don't need to go. That kid can handle it himself. Don't worry too much. Old Lin curled his lips. You really don't want to go? I won't make the mapo tofu anymore. You can make it yourself. Aunt Ching immediately wanted to quit. Don't do that. This is the dish I love. How can you not make it? Isn't that a waste of your good cooking skills? Old Lin suddenly became anxious. Chapter 5104. Before Linny could laugh out loud, a shoe suddenly flew out from the yard and hit his head. At the same time it was accompanied by Old Lin's scolding, "Brat, have you heard enough? You've been on Heaven State Island for 3 years and you've learned to crawl?" "Wrong, I didn't learn to crawl on Heaven State Island. I learned it from you." Linny immediately threw the shoe back and pushed the door open. "Little E, you're back." It was almost noon and Aunt Ching was busy in the kitchen. When she saw Linny, she immediately came out with a face full of surprise. "Aunt Ching, you're really tired of taking care of such a terrible old man." Linny grinned. "Who's a terrible old man?" Old Lin glared angrily and said with a face full of indignation, "Speak clearly, kid. When did I teach you to crawl over the wall?" "The Widow Wang." Lin Yi deliberately stopped mid-sentence. As expected, Aunt Ching was still enthusiastically pouring tea for Lin Yi. As soon as he said this, the surrounding temperature suddenly dropped. Old Lin was so angry that he jumped up on the spot. "Don't frame a good person, kid. When did I crawl over Widow Wang's wall?" Lin Yi, on the other hand, had a strange expression on his face. "What's the rush? I didn't say you crawled over Widow Wang's wall. Aren't you just confessing? I just wanted to say something I heard from Widow Wang just now." "Brat, you win." Old Lin rolled his eyes resentfully, and Aunt Ching covered her mouth and laughed. After asking Lin Yi to sit down and drink tea, she continued to busy in the kitchen. "This tea is not bad, where did you get it?" Lin Yi took a sip and said in surprise. He had drunk a lot of high-quality spiritual tea on Heaven State Island, and it was often the best spiritual tea that couldn't be bought in the market. But this tea looked ordinary at first glance, but after drinking it, it left an endless aftertaste. "Are you stupid? This is just wild tea randomly picked in the mountains. You didn't want it before." Old Lin curled his lips. "Is that so? Then why do I have a deeper taste this time?" Linny asked in surprise. "This is called the way of tea, do you understand? You can't just look at the quality of the tea leaves when you drink tea. More importantly, you have to look at the person who brewed the tea. If you can taste the depth of the tea, it means that you have made some progress." "Not bad." Old Man Lin nodded in satisfaction. Linny chuckled and asked, "Aren't you going to ask about the Archaic Alliance?" "What's there to ask? Since you're here with a smile on your face, that means the matter with the Archaic Alliance has already been settled. Otherwise, why would you have the time to come back?" Old Lin's expression seemed to say that Lin Yun was an idiot. Linny could only smile bitterly. The old man's analysis was very reasonable, but this expression really made people speechless. "Have you heard about what happened in the village?" Old Lin asked. "Yes, I heard from Widow Wang. Sounds a little strange." Linny nodded. He couldn't be sure before he solved the mystery, but he was sure that it wasn't a ghost or a monster like Widow Wang said. There had to be something else going on. "All right, since you just came back, I'll leave this to you." Old Lin pushed the boat along with the current. "Ordering me around like this as soon as I came back? Is that really appropriate?" Linny was speechless. "Who else would I order around if not you?" Old Lin rolled his eyes. "Plus, Herr Gooden has already gone to investigate this. Are you going to let him do it alone?" Linny was speechless. So this was what Herr Gooden was going to do. This guy was strong enough, but the problem was that he wasn't very smart. It was fine for him to find someone to fight, but investigating this kind of strange supernatural event was a bit difficult. Linny could only smile bitterly. "You're going to let him go? Although the West Star Mountain is big, it's like the back garden of that kid's house. Plus, his brute strength is a headache for anyone who sees him. At most he'll just suffer a little. It won't be that easy for him to die. What's there to worry about?" Old Lin curled his lips. "All right, you win. I'll go find him right now." Linny immediately got up to go to the West Star Mountain. To him, Herr Gooden wasn't only his childhood playmate, but also his closest and most trusted brother. Even if he knew that Herr Gooden wouldn't be in any danger, he couldn't help but worry. "Wait." Old Lin suddenly stopped him. After a pause he said, "Leave after you finish eating. Your Aunt Ching's specialties are all good. You can't eat them outside." "It's not that exaggerated. It's just home-cooked food." Aunt Ching smiled as she arranged the table and invited the two to eat. Linny took a bite and his eyes lit up. He praised, "Delicious. With Aunt Ching here, this old man is so lucky. The word dish is the best. Haha, eat more if it's delicious. Aunt Ching smiled. Don't mind me. Just a few bites is enough. Don't take my share. Old Lin didn't hesitate to take the whole plate of mapo tofu. Linny immediately wanted to take it. In the past he couldn't take old Lin's food. He thought that now that his strength had increased it would be better. But in the end he still lost. Don't act like an adult. Aunt Ching scolded with a smile. She had been looking forward to this warm scene for a long time. It was rare for him to have a meal with old Lin and Aunt Ching. Although it was just a simple meal, Linny was still filled with emotions. He felt warm and touched. But most of all he was complaining. Old Lin's ability to snatch food was really fucking invincible. Alright. Hurry up and get to work. You're such a big man but you still have to lick the plate. Don't you feel ashamed? Old Lin sent a message with a look of disdain. I'm not full yet and you're not letting me lick the plate? Linny was indignant. Up until now he had really only taken a few bites. After that, he hadn't been able to snatch any food at all. When he came back to his senses, the plate was already clean. You're just a primordial spirit. How can you eat? It's a waste of food if you eat too much. Let's wait for dinner. I'm in a good mood. I'll let you have 2 bites. Old Lin was very magnanimous. You said it yourself. Linny could only say this to Aunt Ching. He got up and walked out resentfully. West Star Mountain was very big. The mountain range was rugged and the degree of development was very low. Other than a bumpy mountain road that connected a few small mountain villages in the mountain area, it was basically a primitive mountain forest like Shenanjia. Other than the local villagers and some foreign climbers, there was no one here all year round. Chapter 5105. But at this moment, a muscular figure was running in the forest. This speed was far beyond the limits of a normal human, but in the eyes of a practitioner, it wasn't that fast. This person was Lin Yi's childhood friend, Guden Zhou Jiaming. He'd been chasing after the cow ever since he lost it, and it was already the 3rd day. Other people would have given up already, but Guden had no intention of giving up. He grew up in this mountain, and because of the goo poison he couldn't easily leave the West Star Mountain village. To him, this huge West Star Mountain was his only small world, and it was common for him to spend the night in the forest. A few years ago, in order to chase a mountain leopard that ate his chickens and ducks, he persistently chased it for a whole 12 days. In the end, the mountain leopard died of exhaustion. Of course, this wasn't a simple leopard, but it didn't matter what it was, whether it was a ghost or a monster. As long as it stole something from his house, Guden wouldn't let it go. Guden only had one thought in his head, and that was to find the thing and smash it to pieces. Huh? My cow? Guden looked around and suddenly sprinted to the right. There was an old cow lying in the grass, still alive. Its eyes were wide open in despair as it twitched on the ground. It was unknown where a huge force came from, but the old cow was forced back down several times when it tried to get up. It could only continue to twitch on the ground. Old Yellow, what are you doing? Can't get up from the ground? Guden mumbled, looking at the begging eyes of the cow. He walked up and tried to pull the cow up from the ground, but before he could do so, another huge force came from the cow, and it fell back down with a loud thud. Even Guden staggered. Heya, an idiot, came. There was a man lying on a tree branch a dozen meters above them. This man's aura was very similar to Sun Baimei of the Ancient Alliance's Baixia sect. The only difference was that his beard was snow white. He was Sun Baimei's blood brother and also the Baixia sect's de Shixiang who led the Baixia sect's team to the mortal world. The Baixia sect had always been eccentric, and their relationship with the other primordial sects was mediocre. Not many people came to the mortal world to train this time, so no one would pay attention to them. In fact, even Xianijia, the leader of the group, had subconsciously forgotten about them. Ever since Lin Yi showed up, almost all the disciples from the primordial sects had been summoned back to the mortal world. Only the people from the Baixia sect were still outside. It wasn't that they disobeyed orders on purpose, but no one informed them. Sun Baimei, the leader of the group, didn't stay in Shenanjia like the other leaders of the primordial sections. They couldn't find a single Baixia sect disciple even if they turned the entire mountain upside down. Even if Xianijia did remember that there was a sect like this, he wouldn't have been able to inform them. Sun Baimei laid on the branch watching this scene casually. His face was like a cat playing with a mouse. Guden looked as strong as a bull, strong enough to intimidate most normal people, but in his eyes he was just an ant. If he wanted Guden dead, he could do it with just a thought. In his eyes, Guden was already a dead man the moment he followed him. But Sun Baishu didn't plan on killing Guden that quickly. He'd been here for more than a month, and although his plan was progressing smoothly, it was still a bit boring. Now was the perfect time to use this idiot to relieve his boredom. Go ahead, before my baby finishes eating, you won't be able to pull it up even if you tire yourself to death. Sun Baishu had a teasing smile on his face. Without the strength of over 10,000 kilograms, wanting to lift this old cow up from the ground was simply a fool's dream. Let alone ordinary people, even experts at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm like him could not do such a thing. But in the next moment, Gooden spat on his hand and used all his strength to forcefully lift the old bull up from the ground. What's going on? Sun Baimei's eyes were popping out and he almost fell from the tree. He barely managed to hold onto the branch. He stared at Gooden, who was lifting the old bull up high, in shock. Where did this monster come from? What's going on? Gooden, on the other hand, was shocked as well. After he lifted the cow up, he realized that there was a blood hole the size of a wooden bucket on the ground. There was a huge and ugly red bug in there, sucking the innards of the cow. More accurately, it was sucking the blood. This bug was huge, more than 2 meters in front of Gooden, and this was only a small part of it. Its main body was still in the ground. This was a giant bug. The old bull was struggling in the air, and the bug was still sucking its blood like crazy. In the blink of an eye, the bull's organs and body were all gone. The bug pulled its head out of the body, and it had no facial features, no antennae, only a huge bloody mouth. Gooden stared at it for a while and Sun Baimei thought he was stunned. So ugly. Blah. Sun Baishu fell from the tree on the spot, but before he hit the ground he was caught by the blood-red giant worm. Standing on the giant worm's head it said, "Kid, do you know what legendary creature you're looking at? How dare you say it's ugly?" There's another person? Gooden paused. Such slow reflexes. I thought it was some master, but it's just a dumb kid. Sun Baimei shook his head in disdain at Gooden's surprised expression. What happened just now really gave him a fright. He didn't think that Gooden would be able to lift up the old cow so easily. The strength was too shocking. He thought that he had met some master, but now it seemed that he was just an idiot kid with dumb strength. He wasn't worth mentioning at all. Chapter 5106. Do you even need to ask? Baishu looked at Gooden as if he was an idiot. Not only this cow but the chickens and ducks in the nearby villages, the leopards and wild boars in the mountains, they're all food for my baby. All right, there were a few unlucky bastards who came here last time. Actually, my baby likes to drink human blood the most, but I don't want to cause too much of a ruckus before it's fully grown. That's why I didn't do anything to you guys. Did you raise this long worm? Gooden's attention was still on the blood-red worm. Half of its body had already come out of the ground, and it was 7 to 8 meters tall when it stood up. It was at least 10 meters long. Long worm? Ignorant fool. These are blood corpses that have existed since the ancient times. However, these things are too ferocious and terrifying. When they were at their craziest, they once caused chaos in the world. Therefore, since the ancient times, they have been listed as forbidden beasts that must be eradicated. If they see one, they will be killed. No one is allowed to raise them. Unfortunately, our evil warding sect's ancestors secretly froze a few larvae. These larvae are only the size of a finger and no one can find them. Sun Baishu said proudly. Talking to an idiot like this was very stupid no matter how you looked at it, but it wasn't hard to understand. It was like carving a perfect piece of art and anyone would want to show it off to someone. Unfortunately, he couldn't see the light of day yet, so he could only find some satisfaction in talking to Gooden. After all, Gooden was a dead man in his eyes, so he could talk to a dead man. Gooden didn't understand. He didn't even know what the Archaic Alliance was, and he had no idea what the evil warding sect was. What Baishu was telling him was like playing the lute to a cow. However, even if he was playing the lute to a cow, Sun Baishu still played it with relish. If I want to raise the blood corpse worms, I need to constantly absorb the blood essence of various creatures. This kind of thing can't be done in the small pugilistic world of the primordial era. Once someone finds out, they will die without a burial place. Therefore, I have been waiting for an opportunity. As long as I have half a year, I will be able to nurture this blood corpse worm into a true behemoth. At that time, even if the Ancient Alliance is alarmed, it doesn't matter. Even if the Gold Core stage experts come, they will only be sending themselves to death. From then on, I will be the only one in the world. Gooden finally understood a little. He looked at Baishu. Is there something wrong with you? What did you say? Sun Baishu was immersed in a wonderful fantasy and was unable to extricate himself. When he suddenly heard these words, he was so angry that his nose became crooked. Such a perfect plan was actually said to be sick by someone. Moreover, it was by such a silly kid. This was intolerable. I say, are you sick? Do you think you're invincible just because you have this ugly worm? Did a donkey kick your head? Gooden's expression was very serious. He truly thought that this Sun Baishu was a crazy person, a very sick one at that. You're asking to die. Sun Baishu raged. He wanted to let this dumb kid live a little longer. Even if he didn't understand his grand plan completely, he wanted to at least make him feel that it was amazing. He didn't expect Gooden to be this stubborn. He pointed at Gooden and ordered the blood corpse worm, eat him. Strictly speaking, the blood corpse worm wasn't a standard spirit beast. It didn't rely on spiritual chi to nourish itself, and it didn't have the intelligence of a spirit beast. However, once it matured, it had the power to destroy the world. If one had to give an accurate definition, it would be a savage beast. But even if it didn't look like it had any intelligence, it could still understand some simple orders. For example, this 10-meter-long worm roared and pounced at Gooden after hearing Sun Baishu's order. Its featureless face showed a strange excitement. It liked the blood of all living things, especially human blood. Gooden quickly moved 2 steps away, barely dodging the worm's first attack. The stinky body of the blood corpse worm brushed past his face, and after missing the first attack, it drilled into the ground. This thing's burrowing skills were truly top-notch. Disgusting. Gooden wiped the mucus off his face. Even someone with a high tolerance like him couldn't help but want to puke. This bug was the most disgusting bug he'd ever seen in his life, bar none. You won't feel disgusted when you're dead. Sun Baishu stood to the side with his arms crossed and sneered. He had no intention of making a move himself. For an expert at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm like him, dealing with an ordinary person who only had brute force was really degrading. Even though the blood corpse was far from growing to the legendary level of invincibility, it was more than enough to deal with such an ordinary person. Gooden ignored him and focused on observing the ground. This blood corpse worm was a huge threat to him. Even if he drank the complete version of the Titan goo, he wasn't a true practitioner. His attack was strong, but his weak defense was a fatal shortcoming. If he wasn't careful and got hit by the blood corpse worm, then everything would be over. Unfortunately, this place was full of bushes, and the blood corpse worm couldn't find a trace of it. If it was Lin Yi, he could use his spirit sense to locate it, but Gooden didn't have any spirit sense. Sun Baishu looked at Gooden's careful look and laughed. He said with interest, "I'm bored anyway. How about this? I can remind you that the blood corpse worm will definitely come out from under your feet, but I can't tell when exactly. You can bet on your luck. Maybe you'll be able to dodge it." Really? Gooden looked at him seriously, and then laid down on the ground, rubbing his palms. He didn't look like he was going to escape at all. He was ready to fight to the death with the blood corpse worm. Chapter 5107. Gooden ignored him. He could tell that Sun Baishu was strong, but since he didn't attack him, he didn't think much of him. The only thing he had to deal with was the blood corpse worms. Gooden's thoughts were just that simple. Sun Baishu crossed his arms and watched from afar. In his eyes, Gooden was already a dead man. Even though the blood corpse wasn't fully grown yet, it wasn't something a normal person could handle. Especially with Gooden's stupid way of dealing with it, Sun Baishu knew that even he wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. After all, the 10-meter-long blood corpse wasn't something to be messed with. After a moment of stalemate, the ground beneath Gooden's feet moved slightly, and the worm roared as it shot into the sky. Its speed and strength were frightening. Just the wind that it created was too much for them to handle, let alone fight it head-on. An idiot is an idiot, he deserves to be eaten. Sun Baishu smiled coldly. Gooden was no longer on the ground, evidently swallowed by the blood corpse. Although the blood corpse only liked to drink blood, it didn't mind swallowing people after growing to this extent. This was one of its best attacks. But in the next moment, Sun Baishu paused. There was a person on top of the blood corpse's head. It was Gooden, who was in a fishing position. He didn't die? What kind of luck is this? Sun Baishu was shocked. He thought that Gooden was swallowed by the blood corpse, but even so, he didn't think much of him. The only reason he didn't get swallowed was that the idiot was lucky. Nothing else mattered. He would be thrown down by the blood corpse later and he would still end up like this. The blood corpse went berserk and Gooden stayed on top of its head, not letting go no matter what. One man and one bug danced in the air. Sun Baishu looked up with a smile on his face. 5 minutes passed and the man and the bug were still running around. The smile on Sun Baishu's face finally disappeared. This didn't seem right. The blood corpse's speed was starting to slow down, but Gooden was still stuck to it like glue, not getting off. Instead, he looked like he was full of energy. After a while, the blood corpse's roar changed. The violent roar suddenly turned into a pitiful wail. Sun Baishu didn't dare watch anymore. He wanted to grab Gooden himself, but before he could do anything, blood rained down from the sky. Feeling the familiar stench, Sun Baishu froze. Gooden had already landed on the ground, and the 10-meter-long blood corpse was at his feet. What shocked Sun Baishu was that the blood corpse was ripped apart from its mouth, and the gap was more than a meter long. Wah! Sun Baishu exploded. No matter how strong the blood corpse was, its head was ripped in half. How was it supposed to live? This was the treasure he relied on the most. Whether or not he could be invincible in the future depended on this blood corpse that he had brought out by every means possible. Who would have thought that it would be destroyed in the hands of such a fool? Where did this fool get such great strength to be able to tear the blood corpse in half out of thin air? Disgusting. Disgusting. Gooden didn't notice it at all. His hands were covered in the blood and mucus of the blood corpse. That nightmarish feeling made his scalp go numb. Even a man like Gooden couldn't handle it. How dare you kill my blood corpse? Sun Baishu looked at the motionless blood corpse on the ground. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. His head was dizzy. This was the treasure he put all his hope and effort into, and it was gone just like that. Of course I have to kill such a disgusting bug. It ate so many chickens and ducks in the village and it stole my family's cow. How could I let it live? Gooden didn't know that this thing had already killed a few people. He suddenly raised his hand at Sun Baishu. Pay up. What? Sun Baishu was still stunned. He looked at Gooden, not knowing what he was doing. This is your bug. It ate so many things, shouldn't you pay up? Do you think I'm easy to bully? Gooden frowned. At the same time he was seriously calculating the amount in his mind. The village had lost so many chickens and ducks, and his family had lost an old cow as well. He couldn't afford to lose too little money, but he couldn't calculate the exact amount right now. Maybe he should just grab this guy and go from house to house and ask him to pay the compensation? Sun Baishu suddenly started laughing crazily. Just when Gooden was wondering if he was crazy, Sun Baishu grabbed at him with a ferocious face. Sun Baishu, had my plan ruined by an idiot. I'm the idiot. Gooden didn't have time to defend and he was grabbed by the neck. He didn't have any defensive skills and he didn't have extraordinary defense. He was in a life and death situation now. You deserve to die. You should have died a long time ago. My stupid idea caused such a huge mistake. You can die now. Baishu grabbed Gooden with both hands like a madman. He didn't even need to think about what kind of martial arts he was going to use. He didn't need any martial arts to deal with an idiot. He just wanted to strangle this idiot for ruining his plan. Gooden suddenly punched out, hitting Sun Baishu squarely in the chest. Bam! Sun Baishu was instantly sent flying by the hammer, leaving behind a glaring arc of blood in the air. He smashed through 3 large trees before finally falling to the ground. After a long time he staggered to his feet. Who are you? Sun Baishu showed fear on his face for the first time. Gooden had only shown one true strength up until now, and that was pure strength. This wasn't something to be afraid of, but when his strength reached the point where he could tear the blood corpse apart with his bare hands, and he could even send a foundation building peak like him flying with one punch, he had to look at him differently. Chapter 5108. You're asking for my name? I'm Heir Gooden. Gooden scratched his head with an honest face. As for the name Zhou Jiaming, he didn't really tell people about it. People who knew him just called him Heir Gooden. Heir Gooden? Is that a person's name? Sun Baishu was already coughing up blood, and now he was coughing up even more violently. He thought that he'd met the disciple of some hidden master. The qi in the common world was extremely weak, but it didn't exclude the possibility of powerful beings existing. But what kind of powerful being would give his disciple such a stupid name? Heir Gooden? How is it not a person's name? Are you cursing me, you coward? I'll beat you to death. Gooden was furious. He charged forward, wanting to punch again. He didn't use his full strength in that punch, but even so, it was enough to make Baishu spit out blood. If he charged up for another punch, Baishu, who was a complete Foundation establishment practitioner, would probably be beaten to death. Coward? Calling me a coward? Sun Baishu was furious as well. It was only because of the sudden turn of events that he became cautious. If he didn't find out who Gooden was, he wouldn't be able to rest easy even if he killed him today. Who knew what kind of powerful being was behind this brute? But at this point he couldn't back off anymore. This idiot killed his blood corpse bugs, beat him up until he coughed up blood, and now he was coming at him even more fiercely. This guy didn't know what death was, did he? Did he really think that he, a complete Foundation establishment practitioner, was easy to bully? Sun Baishu grunted coldly as he shook his sleeves, causing 2 pitch-black short blades to suddenly appear. They swished and spun rapidly in his hands, and when looked at from afar, they were like two balls of blurry pitch-black blade images that revealed an extremely dangerous aura. Gooden didn't care about that, however. He picked up the tree that Sun Baishu broke earlier and swung it at him. He might seem like an honest guy, but he wasn't an idiot. He knew that he didn't have any techniques to speak of, and there was a prerequisite to using brute strength to take down 10 skills. They had to be at least one level apart. This person in front of him didn't look like someone easy to deal with, and he'd be at a disadvantage if he got close. He might as well just use the tree. Idiot. Baishu smiled coldly, not bothering to face the tree head-on. Instead, he moved behind the tree, avoiding Gooden's line of sight. With a few steps, he was right in front of Gooden, ready to slash his throat with 2 slashes. Just as he was about to succeed, Sun Baishu's knees suddenly sank without any warning, and he unexpectedly knelt down. What? Gooden paused, pushing aside the tree with one hand and punching with the other. Bam! Sun Baishu flew out again, spitting out another mouthful of blood. How could this be? As Sun Baishu vomited blood, he looked at his knees in disbelief. Why did they suddenly sink just now? It felt like they were hit by a wave of true energy. This fool actually had such an undetectable method. It didn't seem like it. Could it be that this guy wasn't a fool but an expert in disguise? Gooden didn't care about that. He was an honest guy, but he knew how to take advantage of someone's weakness to kill them. Seeing that Baishu wasn't dead after that punch, he roared and chased after them with the tree in his hands. Fuck, I don't believe it. Whitebeard didn't believe in heresy, so he stood up to meet him. Although he was extremely fearful of being hit in the knee, he was still an expert at the great circle of the Foundation establishment realm. He wouldn't be so easily scared that he would flee. Most importantly, he didn't believe that he couldn't even defeat a fool. He didn't believe in heresy. A pair of black daggers spun around in his hands, instantly cutting the tree into pieces. He'd purposely used the tree as cover to block Gooden's line of sight, but at the same time he'd also blocked his own line of sight. He didn't know when Gooden had used that chi. But this time he was smarter. With his strength, he didn't need to be sneaky at all against an idiot who only knew how to use brute force. He could just take it head-on. There was nothing between them that could block their line of sight. No matter what the opponent did, he would be able to see it clearly. Everything was going according to Sun Baishu's plan. The tree in Gooden's hands couldn't even take a single hit from his dagger, and the tree was cleared in an instant. The distance between the two was less than 3 steps, and there wasn't anything between them. Gooden didn't panic at all. Since the tree couldn't be used anymore, he might as well fight with his fists. After all, this was what he was best at. Sun Baishu was a bit stunned as he looked at this simple punch. The punch looked powerful and unstoppable, but he couldn't feel any chi ripples from it. There weren't any tricks either. It was just a simple punch. That simple? Sun Baishu didn't quite believe it and didn't respond for a long time. It wasn't until the last moment that he came to his senses. The corners of his mouth curled into a sinister smile. Since that's the case, you can die in peace. He wasn't an idiot. Even an idiot could tell that Gooden's punch was powerful, especially after taking 2 punches in a row. Even someone like Sun Baishu, a complete Foundation establishment practitioner, didn't dare let his guard down. He might not be able to gain any advantage if he fought head-on, but who said that you had to fight head-on to kill someone? At the last moment when Gooden's punch exploded, Sun Baishu's body flashed, and he appeared behind Gooden like a ghost. This was his signature movement technique, follow the shadow. At the same time, the 2 daggers in his hands moved to the back of Gooden's neck, ready to take his head off easily. Sun Baishu had done this too many times and his movements were smooth and flawless. In terms of strength, he wasn't much weaker than Shui Jianfeng, the #1 Foundation practitioner in the Archaic Alliance. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a strange change occurred. Just like how his knees had suddenly sunk, this time it was his arms instead. The 2 pitch-black daggers deviated from their trajectory at the last moment. Sun Baishu was instantly horrified. What the fuck was going on? Chapter 5109. Who the hell are you? Baishu struggled to get up from the ground, one hand covering his mouth that was leaking air as he looked around warily. He'd taken 2 punches and 1 elbow from Air Gooden, and even a foundation-building perfected master like him couldn't take it. He was already heavily injured. But compared to his injuries, what scared him more was the 2 sudden chi attacks. There were only 2 possibilities: either Gooden was a master pretending to be weak or it was someone else. I told you my name's Air Gooden. You're not only crazy, you're also an idiot, aren't you? Gooden frowned. Baishu spat out another mouthful of blood. He was a Foundation completion master and he was treated like an idiot by an idiot. Was there anything more painful than this? But this time, Baishu didn't dare continue to fight with Gooden. If he did, he'd be beaten to death. After looking around carefully, Baishu suddenly retreated without any warning. A grand perfected foundation establishment expert had actually been scared away by a foolish brat from the secular world. This kind of thing was simply too shameful. Fortunately, this was a desolate mountain with no people. Sun Baishu secretly comforted himself in his heart. Where there's life, there's hope. As long as he went back to recuperate from his injuries and plan again, he would be able to take revenge sooner or later. He ran? Gooden scratched his head, confused. He thought that this guy was crazy. Not only did he keep such a disgusting bug, but he kept pausing in the middle of a fight. Did he escape from some mental hospital? But Gooden wouldn't let him get away just like that. He chased after him, not because he wanted to kill him, but because he hadn't paid the money yet. But other than his monstrous strength, Gooden didn't have anything else he could use. He didn't have any movement techniques, so he could only run a little faster than a normal person. Trying to catch up to a complete foundation establishment practitioner like this was too much, even with Sun Baishu's heavy injuries. Fortunately, this idiot's speed is so slow that it makes one's hair stand on end. Otherwise, we would have suffered a double loss today. Sun Baishu looked back as he ran with all his might, and he couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. However, he immediately frowned. From the looks of it, the possibility of this fool pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger was extremely small. Did that mean that someone was secretly ambushing him? Who could it be? To be able to hide from his senses without him noticing, this person wasn't weak. Only the Archaic Alliance had a master like this. Could it be a senior brother from some ancient sect? The Wuxia sect had a lot of enemies, and so did Sun Baimei. Sun Baimei couldn't think of anyone who would ambush him. He had never wanted to expose his whereabouts and plans to anyone, except for his blood brother, Sun Baimei. Could it be Baimei? Baishu froze. He didn't know that his brother was already dead. He gritted his teeth as he ran. If that was the case, he wouldn't let his brother go. Seeing that he had left Gooden far behind, Baishu finally slowed down. But before he could catch his breath, a calm voice came from in front of him. You want to rest after such a short distance? That's not good, is it? Baishu's face paled as he turned to the voice. There was a young man leaning against a tree, a faint smile on his face. It was Linny. Who are you? Sun Baishu would be an idiot if he still couldn't react at this moment. At this moment, even if he used his toes to think, he could figure out that this person in front of him was the one who launched the sneak attack on him. There, his brother. Linny pointed at Gooden, who was chasing them. Gooden paused when he saw Linny. He rushed up and hugged Linny in joy. Boss, when did you come back? Why didn't you tell me? I just came back to the village. I had a meal with the old man and came looking for you. You sure ran far, making it so hard for me to find you, Linny complained. Linny complained with a half-serious smile. It was true that he ran far, but it wasn't that hard to find. After all, the blood corpse had made quite a commotion, and he had sensed it from afar. That was why he chased all the way here. I don't usually come here. I'm here to chase after this crazy person. You don't know, boss, but this crazy person has a disgusting bug that steals chickens and ducks. He even ate my old cow and he doesn't want to pay up. Do you think I'll let him go? Gooden said angrily. Baishu wanted to cry, but there were no tears. He could endure being called a psycho, but what made him want to die was that Gooden was chasing him so hard just to make him pay. Why the fuck didn't you say so earlier? Then I can't let him go. He's a sinner. I'll leave him to you, Gooden, Linny smiled. All right, wait a bit, I'll be done soon, Gooden replied and pounced at Sun Baishu energetically. Sun Baishu looked at Linny with fear. He saw that Linny really didn't want to do anything, so he quickly turned and ran. He didn't know who Linny was, and Gooden wasn't someone he wanted to mess with. It was better to run. The two sneak attacks just now had taught him a lesson. Sun Baishu quickly turned around and carefully used his chi to protect his body. This way, even if the opponent attacked him with chi, he would be able to block it. He didn't think that the chi wouldn't come, but a blue lightning bolt instead. His body went numb all of a sudden, and even though he used his willpower to keep himself from falling, he still stumbled a little. Gooden, who caught up to him, punched him in the back without hesitation, sending him flying away with a grunt. He fell into a 10-meter deep ravine, never to get up again. Linny used his mind to check and made sure that the guy was dead. He nodded and patted Gooden's shoulder. All right, this guy's dead. I'll get someone to clean up the place. Let's go back. Chapter 51:10. Oh, okay. Gooden had always listened to Linny. Whatever Linny told him to do, he'd do it. He'd been like this since he was young. The two walked back to the village with their arms around each other's shoulders. Linny asked curiously, Herr Gooden, I noticed that you've gotten stronger recently. You're much better than before. Who did you learn from? This wasn't a false. Gooden was never a proper practitioner, but from the way he fought with Sun Baishu, he could tell that he didn't just rely on brute strength. Every punch he made had some sort of finesse to it, and what was rare was that he didn't stick to one move or one style. He just used his heart. More accurately speaking, Gooden wasn't using his fist skills, but his fist went, a fist will that could defeat 10 people with pure strength. Your grandpa, Gooden scratched his head and smiled. Really? The old man has that much free time? Linny blinked. From what he remembered, old Lin rarely taught people proactively, especially someone like Herr Gooden who didn't look like a good disciple at all. Old Lin wouldn't do something like playing the lute to a cow. On a deeper level, to Herr Gooden, being able to live a peaceful life in the mountains was already a blessing. Old Lin didn't want to change his life path. Being ordinary was a blessing. He didn't want to teach me, but I don't know why my strength has been getting stronger and stronger these years. It's like I can't control it and I always break things. Your grandpa couldn't take it anymore and so he taught me a way to control my strength. Gooden laughed. What way? Linny couldn't help but be curious. Punching 1,000 punches a day, Gooden said. What kind of stupid method is that? There's no technique at all, isn't this old man too lazy? Linny was speechless. If he didn't want to teach him, then he should teach him properly. Old Lin was just tiring the kid out, but it's very useful. At first he made me hit the rock every day with all my strength, but I kept accidentally breaking the rock. It took me a whole year to barely do it, Gooden explained. What happens after that? Linny nodded. It sounded a bit more interesting. After that, I changed to hitting trees and I still asked for a bit of damage. That way, I hit trees for another year, Gooden said honestly. And then? Linny continued to ask with great interest. After that, it's like fetching water. I can't use all my strength to make any splashes and I can't make any ripples either. I can't do that even now, Gooden scratched his head. Linny was shocked. He patted Gooden's shoulder, stunned. If you could do that, you'd be an unparalleled fist master. I just realized that you're actually a genius. Old Lin's method seemed perfunctory, but it was actually very meaningful. From hitting rocks to hitting trees to fetching water, every change meant that Gooden's control and understanding of strength increased. Not making any splashes or ripples was something even Linny couldn't do right now. If Gooden could do that, then it meant that his control of fist strength had reached an unprecedented level. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was a fist master. Ever since he was young, Linny never thought that Gooden's talent was that high. Whether it was comprehension or potential, Gooden was below average even amongst normal people. He didn't think that he'd have this kind of effect when he trained in the fist art. It was truly impressive. But come to think of it, old Lin's method would only work on someone as innocent as Gooden. If it were Linny, putting aside the question of whether he'd be able to practice 1,000 punches a day, just the random thoughts in his mind would make it hard for him to focus and control his punching strength. Linny had a high comprehension, but he really couldn't do it with Gooden's stupid method. After all, it wasn't using his brain but his body to feel and control everything. Being too smart wasn't a good thing at this time but a bad thing. I'm not a genius, I'm stupid. Your grandpa said that he could do it in 3 months, but I've been training for 3 to 4 years and I still can't do it, Gooden said with a face full of shame. Listen to his bragging. Linny didn't believe him at all. From his perspective, it was already amazing that Gooden could do this and old Lin could do it in 3 months. He must have drunk too much. Right, Linny bro, why did you come back this time? Didn't you say you went to Sky Class Island? Is it fun? Is it overseas? Gooden asked impatiently. Don't rush, I'll tell you slowly. Sky Class Island isn't overseas, it's a practitioner's plane that's isolated from our world. The practitioners there are all very strong. Lin patiently told Gooden everything from the beginning, telling him everything no matter if it was a secret or not. Lin never hid anything from this childhood friend of his. The two walked back to Star West Village, and Lin didn't even finish talking about the northern island. He regretted it immediately. Wasn't he a bit too detailed? How long would it take for him to finish everything? But thinking about it, now that the Archaic Alliance's business was done, Lin didn't have anything urgent to do. He was planning to stay in Star West Village for a few more days, since he had nothing better to do anyway. He might as well tell Gooden the story. For the next 3 days Lin stayed with Gooden. Of course he ate with old Lin and Aunt Ching. Lin tried all sorts of methods, but he couldn't gain any advantage over old Lin. He couldn't help but sigh, the old man's skill at stealing food was really off the charts. The only thing he got out of it was that after 3 days, Lin finally told him about Sky-class Island. Even then, Gooden still wanted more, as if he wanted to give up his life to accompany him. He always wanted to go to the outside world, but because of the goo poison, he couldn't leave Star West Village too far. Sky-class Island was just a dream. Chapter 51:11. Your cooking isn't bad. Gooden must have done a lot in his past life to be able to get such a virtuous wife like you. Lin couldn't stop praising Yuan, who was at the side. She was the one who prepared this meal. Not at all, Aunt Qing's cooking is much better than mine. I learned a lot from her. I'm satisfied if I can cook half as well. Yuan smiled and looked at Gooden. Yuan smiled as she looked at Gooden. Her life now was to stay at home and do some chores, and occasionally she'd go out to the fields with Gooden. She'd seen the outside world, but she preferred this kind of simple life. Otherwise, she wouldn't have gotten together with Gooden in the first place. Aunt Qing's cooking is good, but unfortunately, I don't have the luck to eat it. Lin shook his head and sighed. What? Haven't you been eating Aunt Qing's cooking these few days? Yuan asked curiously. Lin bro can't compete with his grandpa, Gooden explained as he wolfed down the food. Our family's misfortune. Sorry for the embarrassment. Lin felt that old Lin didn't have any respect for his elders. He was already so old, and yet he was still able to snatch food from a young person like him so easily. Yuan immediately covered her mouth and laughed. In order to find Aunt Qing to learn how to cook, she often went to the Lin family. Old man Lin had always been very serious in front of juniors like them. She didn't expect him to have such an old urchin side. Forget it. Let's not talk about these sad things. Right, Gooden, is the effect of the goo poison on you much weaker now? Lin asked. No, Gooden shook his head. Then you stayed in the West Star Mountain for 3 days. You could still be so lively when fighting against a master like Sun Baishu. If it was before, you would have been so tired that you needed to drink some spring water, right? Lin asked curiously. Because I didn't use my full strength, Gooden said shockingly. What? You didn't use your full strength when you beat up Sun Baishu? You didn't use your full strength against the blood corpses? Lin was taken aback. He was already shocked when he saw Gooden's strength, and now that he was still alive and kicking after the fight, he subconsciously thought that the poison's effect on him had weakened. He didn't think that this wasn't Gooden's true strength. The blood corpse bug was already a powerful monster, and Sun Baishu was a foundation-building perfected master. Even if Lin helped a little in the dark, the most important thing was still Gooden's own strength. If this wasn't his full strength, then what would it be like if he went all out? No, I'm still holding back more than half of my strength. Otherwise, if I use my full strength, my body will become as weak as if I'm sick. I must quickly drink the spirit spring water to alleviate the pain. That feeling is too uncomfortable. Gooden said with lingering fear. This kind of situation happened a lot when he first started training, and it had left a shadow in his heart. No matter what, he would subconsciously hold back his strength to prevent the same thing from happening again. So if you really used your full strength, both Sun Baishu and the blood corpse bug would die in one punch. Hey, you really are a monster, Lin sighed. I'm not that strong, Gooden scratched his head honestly. Lin was speechless. Indeed, from the perspective of Sky-class Island, a foundation-building perfected master wasn't strong at all, but this was the common world. If Gooden's words got out, people would spit blood in anger. Gooden didn't have any concept of this. In his eyes, whether it was Lin Dongfeng or Lin Yi, they were all many times stronger than him. He didn't think that killing Sun Baishu in one punch was something amazing. At the end of the day, it was because he hadn't seen the outside world. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so confident. Right, I thought of something that might be able to store spirit spring water. That way you can go out and play more often. Lin Yi's eyes lit up. Gooden wanted to go out and see the outside world. As his big brother, of course, he couldn't forget about this. What is it? Gooden was happy. The Wanyankan box. Anything that's placed in it will retain its medicinal properties. Maybe spirit spring water will work too. Let's try it out, Lin said excitedly. Whether it was old Lin or Gooden, spirit spring water was something they couldn't live without. Old Lin was fine, going out for a while wasn't a problem, but Gooden couldn't. Like he said, once he used his full strength he would become weak and powerless. He couldn't live without spirit spring water, and spirit spring water was very special. No matter what you put it in, it would lose its effect. It was almost impossible to bring it out. However, they could try the Wanyankan box. At this point, the two couldn't care less about eating. They ran out excitedly to try it out. They just used the Wanyankan box to store a bit of spirit spring water, and the two were dumbfounded. The box was leaking. The Wanyankin box could perfectly store the medicinal properties of all kinds of herbs, so even if it looked like a normal box, Lin Yi thought that it was a completely sealed box. Otherwise, how could the medicinal properties be preserved? Who would have thought that it really was a wooden box? The spirit spring water leaked out the moment it was put in, not a single drop was left. What do we do? The two looked at each other for a while, and Lin Yi suddenly had an idea. He took a mineral water bottle and put the spirit spring water into the Wanyankin box. This way it wouldn't leak out. In the end, it really didn't leak anymore. Unfortunately, perhaps because of the mineral water bottle, the spirit spring water lost its effect, becoming no different from normal spring water. Lin Yi was speechless for a while and finally shook his head. I don't have a choice. Looks like I'll have to go back to Sky Class Island and think of a way to refine this Wanyankin box again. I believe it won't take too long. Gooden, you'll have to stay in the village for the time being. It's fine, I'm not in a hurry. This way I can practice in peace. Gooden was a little disappointed, but he wasn't too stubborn about going out. Plus, he couldn't just go out casually before he mastered it. What if he embarrassed Lin Yi? Okay, I'll come back to pick you up. Lin Yi patted Gooden's shoulder. This was his most important friend, and he had to help him fulfill this wish. Chapter 51:12. At the end of the day, Old Man Lin was his only relative. Since he was going to set the island as his base camp in the future, he had to let Old Man Lin have a look. As for Lin Yi, he went to another place. He wanted to meet Big Brother Dafeng in person. In the vast sea, a luxurious cruise ship sailed slowly. Its speed was almost slowed to the limit. From a distance, it did not seem to be moving at all. It looks luxurious on the outside, but there are mysteries hidden inside. No one would have thought that such a luxurious cruise ship is actually a branch of the Red Conches. Big Brother Dafeng, you're really bold. Lin Yi leaned on the railing and looked into the distance. The blue sky and the sea stretched as far as the eye could see. Even with his eyesight, he could not find a third thing. Haha, boss, don't underestimate this luxury ship of mine. It's using the most advanced technology, and all communication signals are extremely secretive. Even the satellites in the sky won't be able to detect it. This is international waters too, so they won't be able to reach that far. Dafeng Bro chuckled behind him. I mean, you actually dared to ask me to come here. Aren't you afraid of being discovered? Lin Yi glanced at him. The people he had to be wary of were naturally the people in the center. Be it the Red Conches or the Fire Wolves, the two were the same organization. They were both branches of the center. For Big Brother Dafeng, the real danger came from the center's headquarters. After all, he was now Lin Yi's spy. Boss Lin Yi, don't worry. The people in this cruise ship branch are all trustworthy. Furthermore, the branch has a lot of autonomy. As long as we don't take the initiative to report, even the headquarters won't know our exact location, Big Brother Dafeng said confidently. Oh? Then do you know the exact location of the center's headquarters? Lin Yi asked. Ever since he discovered the Chamber of Commerce in the center on Heaven Island, his interest in the center had grown. It was rare for his primordial spirit to be projected back to the secular world. If there was a chance, he planned to infiltrate the center's headquarters to investigate. I really don't know about this. Rumor has it that the location of the central headquarters is not fixed. Only the people in the headquarters know the exact location. Big Brother Dafeng shook his head and smiled bitterly. All these years, the central headquarters has let us do whatever we want, and we're also very secretive about the central headquarters. Aside from the routine report every once in a while, we basically have no interaction with them. Even if it's a routine report, it's only through satellite communication. To be honest, I still don't know what my superior looks like. Then can you think of a way? Lin Yi couldn't help but frown. The central organization was actually so cautious in their actions. They didn't even reveal the slightest flaw to their own subordinate organization. It was really unexpected. To be honest, Boss Lin Yi, ever since I received the letter you sent from Heaven Island 2 years ago, I've been trying in this regard. I've tried many methods, but none of them succeeded. Half a year ago, I was the closest to success. My superior was ready to summon me to the headquarters, but I don't know why I was suddenly stopped. Thinking about it, it's a pity. Big Brother Dafeng couldn't help but sigh. It wasn't just a spy for Lin Yi. In fact, even he himself was very curious about the central headquarters. People had a thirst for knowledge. The more mysterious the central headquarters was, the more they, the subordinates, wanted to find opportunities to probe and understand. This was human nature. There's such a thing? Lin Yi thought for a moment and suddenly said, there must be a reason for the sudden stop. Could it be that you're being suspected? No way. Big Brother Dafeng was shocked. He immediately shook his head and said disapprovingly, that's impossible. If the higher-ups were really suspicious of me, they would have taken action a long time ago. How could there be no movement for half a year? That's true. Linny nodded. If the Central was really an extremely strict organization, once they were suspicious, they would definitely eliminate the root of the problem quickly to prevent future trouble. It was impossible for them to not take action for half a year. It seemed that he was indeed overthinking. To be honest, boss, your sudden return this time is too surprising. I thought you were joking when you called me before. I didn't expect it to be true. Big Brother Dofing smiled. You've worked hard these few years. Linny sighed. Although he did not ask Big Brother Dofing to do anything particularly dangerous in the past few years, even if he did nothing, the sensitive identity of an undercover agent itself represented a huge risk. Not to mention he still had to find a way to inquire about the central headquarters. Every attempt he made before was actually risky. This was a dangerous job that put his life on the line. Ordinary people might not be able to withstand such huge pressure. Boss Linny, what are you talking about? This is what I should do. Big Brother Dofing smiled. Linny patted him on the shoulder. In fact, this time Big Brother Dofing directly asked him to come to this cruise ship branch. In addition to showing that he had complete control of this branch, it was not difficult for Lin Yi to guess another more important intention, to express his loyalty. Being an undercover agent was the most insecure and belonging profession in the world. Just like Big Brother Dofing. For the central headquarters he was a traitor, but for Lin Yi and the others he might not be 100% trusted. After all, no one knew if he would secretly rebel again. As an undercover agent, the best way to show loyalty was to provide important information. However, because the central headquarters was too mysterious, Big Brother Dofing could not dig out any really valuable and important information in the past few years. Now that he was suddenly summoned by Lin Yi, it would be a lie to say that he was not flustered at all. That was why they met on the cruise ship today. This meant that Big Brother Dofing was showing everything he had in front of Lin Yi. If he wanted to rebel again in the future, these underlings of the cruise ship branch were a fatal danger. At that time, as long as one of them leaked information to Lin Yi, he would die without a burial place. Going this far was no different from showing his loyalty. Lin Yi could 100% trust his loyalty, but Big Brother Dofing had to pay a huge price for it. He was walking a tightrope. If one of the underlings of the cruise ship branch was unreliable and secretly leaked information to the central headquarters, he would also die without a burial place. Chapter 51:13. For Big Brother Dofing to be able to do what he did today, it meant that he was not a fool. He would not do things that he was not confident about, or else he would have died long ago. Although Big Brother Dofing did not say it, Linny knew it. The two had a tacit understanding. While the two were talking, a fishing boat suddenly appeared in the distance. Unexpectedly, the fishing boat approached them. Seeing that Lin Yi seemed a little surprised, Big Brother Dofing smiled and explained, "Boss, don't be surprised. Fishing boats are the best cover at sea. The people who go out on missions here all rely on fishing boats. It seems that Mute and the others are back." Mute? Lin Yi was stunned. "Yeah, a mute Chinese man. I saved him at sea half a year ago. He used to be a special forces soldier abroad. He is clean and efficient. Sometimes he is better than Meng Gaohai and the others." Big Brother Dofing nodded. Half a year ago? Lin Yi's expression changed slightly when he heard this. The timing was too coincidental. He could not help but remind, "Aren't you afraid that he is a spy sent by the central headquarters?" "No, don't worry, boss. I'm very cautious about this matter. This Mute is just an ordinary person. It happened because of the tsunami. When I saved him he was already dead. Later on, as a last resort, I forcefully electrocuted him back to life. If he's really an undercover agent sent by the central headquarters, he wouldn't use this method to get close to me, right? Moreover, I found someone to check his background afterward." "Everything is normal," Big Brother Dofing said confidently. "It is better to be safe than sorry." Linny nodded. At this time, a ladder had been set up between the fishing boat and the cruise ship. A dark-skinned young man with a buzz cut walked over quickly. He looked a bit like a special forces soldier. Even his walk showed a rare courage and capability. Mute walked over and nodded to Big Brother Dofing. He then handed over a file, but his eyes fell on Lin Yi with some scrutiny. "Not bad, not bad. You're really good. This file can save our branch a lot of trouble. Go get your reward." Big Brother Dofing opened the file and looked through it. His face was full of praise. "Yes, yes," Mute responded. He looked deeply into Lin Yi's eyes before turning around to leave. At this time Lin Yi suddenly said, "You said he's an ordinary person?" "That's right. Although he was in the special forces, Isn't he just an ordinary person compared to a cultivator? Big Brother Feng nodded in surprise. Then you've really made a mistake. This is a true early-stage foundation establishment expert, also known as a Heaven Dao stage expert in the secular world. Although he hid his aura very well and could easily fool you Heaven stage experts, it's not very realistic for him to hide from my senses. If I'm not wrong, you should be a spy sent by the central headquarters, right? Lin Yi stared at Mute with an indifferent expression. What? Big Brother Feng was shocked. Mute stopped in his tracks and turned around to look at Lin Yi warily. Finally he said, You are Lin Yi? You know me? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows slightly. This guy tried everything to find out about the central headquarters just to work for you? Mute glanced at the shocked Big Brother Feng and continued to ask. That's right. Just to investigate a Heaven stage perfect stage expert, you didn't hesitate to send an early stage foundation establishment expert. Moreover, you've been undercover for half a year. You're really the only one in the central headquarters to be this cautious. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Very good. Looks like my mission can end here. Mute suddenly laughed. In the past half a year, in order to gain Big Brother Feng's trust, a dignified early-stage foundation establishment expert like him had to run errands for someone else. If it wasn't for completing the mission, he would have already turned hostile and quit. Is that so? Then can you answer a question of mine? Don't worry, it's not a confidential question from the central headquarters. It's just to satisfy my curiosity. Seeing that the other party didn't make a move, Lin Yi asked, If I don't appear, how long will you be undercover here? A year. If there's no substantial evidence in a year, then he's innocent. Of course there's no need for that now. As long as there's evidence, the undercover plan will automatically turn into a purge plan. Mute grinned. He was in a good mood at the moment and didn't mind answering this kind of unimportant question. Besides, everyone in this cruise ship branch, including Lin Yi and Big Brother Feng, was already a pile of dead people in his eyes. Of course, there was nothing to hide in front of dead people. Lin Yi and Big Brother Feng looked at each other and suddenly shook their heads regretfully. What a pity. What's a pity? A pity that you're going to be buried in the sea soon? Mute revealed a somewhat playful expression. He was a dignified early-stage foundation establishment expert. In this secular world, he was an invincible existence. He didn't think that anyone here could escape from his palm. It's a pity that I don't know the soul-searching technique. Otherwise, I should be able to learn a lot of useful things from you. Isn't that a pity? Lin Yi smiled as if nothing had happened. You can't be so naive to think that you can deal with me, right? Mute was immediately amused and sneered. Although I don't know how you saw through my realm, it doesn't mean anything. In the secular world, there has never been an expert who can fight against a foundation establishment expert. There hasn't been one in the past and there won't be one in the future. Tsk, there's a limit to your ignorance. Now that the Archaic Alliance has appeared out of nowhere, there are foundation establishment experts everywhere. There are even Golden Core experts. You don't even know such a big thing. Don't you read books or read newspapers? Ignorance can kill people. Lin Yi said with a serious face. How is this possible? Mute was shocked when he heard that. In the past 6 months, he had not done anything other than focusing on being an undercover by Big Brother Feng's side. He had not even heard of the Archaic Alliance. Everything is possible. Be more careful in your next life. As Lin Yi said that, he suddenly slapped him. A dragon's roar sounded out of nowhere. Mute was shocked and wanted to jump off the ship to escape. Lin Yi was now unfathomable in his eyes. He didn't dare to act rashly before he had a clear idea of Lin Yi's strength. It didn't matter even if Lin Yi was stronger than him. As long as he escaped and sent the news back to the central headquarters, the experts from the headquarters would come to take care of him. He just needed to keep his life.